I believe that he used black technology to bring down Tower 1 and 2. It wasn't internal explosives alone. Although, with the presence of thermate there and sulfur, there's cutter charges present there.
I think it was a contingency.
But the thing is it wasn't a traditional implosion, because in a traditional implosion, the exterior of the building will maintain itself and implode inwardly. What we had is an emulsifying, cascading effect. A complete. The technology that Clay and I believe they used is ultrasonic technology.
Energy weapons.
It's under the rubric of energy weapons.
Well, it's what they call embrittlement technology. Let me give you an example. It's an intuitive theory. Is that if you look at the World Trade Towers, they look like tuning forks, don't they?
Mm-hmm. At the base.
At the base. And I think
the strength of more importantly, the strength of the building was in its exterior. That's irrefutable. Although there were 47 internal columns in Tower 1 and 2, the general strength was transferred to the exterior part of the
248 columns. So I really think that possibly they might have used some a technology that would cause maybe a molecular breakdown of metal, glass, or cement. It's just I'm being very broad. It's a good question.
I believe that they probably couldn't remove the equipment. I think probably the equipment was in Building 7. And that was traditional implosion. So.
And that's why they pulled Building 7.
The reason, the sine qua non of understanding Tower 1 and 2 going down is understanding the need to maintain the integrity of the tub. That concrete area around Tower 1 and 2. If you lose the tub, you lose southern Manhattan.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me just stay with the directed energy
Sure.
weapons or acoustical weapons or brittlement technology. Is that I tell you what really raised our brows is the crash of Flight 587.
Far Rock.
That happened about a month.
That happened in November of 2000.
And I'll tell you why is that according to the NTSB and the FAA or people in charge of the crashes, that both engines came off and the tail section came off. And this plane was only 2,800 feet at the time it started its descent. I actually had the New York Times article where they show that it would take 10 Gs for the engines to fall off. Now, I don't know if 2,800 feet is going to be able to be enough time for those engines to fall off, to sustain 10 Gs. So the purpose, I believe, of that crash was to federalize the airports, and also it was mainly directed for the consumption of those who were impeding the Patriot Act and
essentially the federalization of the airport, the security system.
And keep in mind, it was primarily Dominicans on that plane.
Mm-hmm.
How many were illegals, and how many have the means to or the know-how to be able to prosecute or sue the airline industry for anything that happened. So they had blamed the plane on wind turbulence from another jet. I just think it's absolutely ludicrous. And I actually have the New York Times article where there was a funeral that day and for firefighters, and they looked up and they saw what they thought was an explosion in the fuselage. So that was later blamed on the shoe bomber.
Which airplane are you talking about?
That's
587. It was
American Airlines 587.
Which is
That
which
went
one?
down off
November?
of Long Island.
In
Yeah.
2000.
Far Rockaway.
It was right in 2001.
But what does that have to do with the towers?
Well, I think that possibly that same technology was used on that airplane.
But I'll tell you
But
what.
there was no airplane.
No.
No, there's
This was
two separate events.
Bring down the Dominican public flight.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with
Because they
directed
used
energy
embrittlement
weapons?
technology, the same technology that we suspect, and that's the big word here, operative, is suspect, because we don't have the forensics to prove this. But logically, if you're going to bring down Tower 1 and 2, okay, and you want to maintain the integrity of the tub, you have to reduce the pound per square inch of pressure coming down exponentially. You got to turn it into talcum powder. That's exactly what we watched here. Everything was shattered, emulsified, and basically what you had was a building reduced to a very, very small.
That's true.
The destruction of very small pieces.
500,000 pounds of material completely disintegrated upon that collapse.
Lower Manhattan.
It never hit the bottom.
Well, it was glass, concrete, and steel.
So you still think planes probably hit.
Planes hit, but then caused this reaction.
I gotta plead ignorance on the no planes theory. I haven't looked into it. I'm a person that if I'm going to live by the sword, I'm going to die by the sword. I'm not going to turn around and point fingers at Paula saying she's wrong about this when I haven't looked at it. I have not looked at the no planes theory very closely.
Okay, let me make just a comment on that because that sort of introduces what I want to do with this show. Black operations to me means people who know something, they've been informed, they've been given information that the regular population doesn't have. And when I say that the no planes theory is a psychological operation, having watched it and having become involved with the evidence and then seeing how that evidence affects me and affects other people, it appears as though when you get knowledge, there's a responsibility. And you were talking about your source with the topics that you're interested in and the topics that your source shared with you. I am proposing that you can feed in via the internet some provocative information and you get people to start looking into it. Like Shawn, you weren't interested to look into this, but
No, I didn't say that at all. I simply haven't.
You haven't.
My attention's been directed elsewhere.
But for some people they have, and in one case there's a lady named Rosalie Grable, and as soon as she got on the internet, after she looked at the first hit and went very carefully, she saw within the first hit there was no airplane. As soon as that information hit the internet, she was barraged with this repercussion. And it was psychologically very difficult to deal with that perception. And she lived in many ways like you're describing, people who have been fed information that others haven't, alienated and so on. But the information that started coming in, particularly from one guy, Gerald Holmgren, was so provocative. And he would say, for instance, take a look, Flight 11, Flight 175 were both canceled 10 days before. So everybody in this group marches off to check the sites to see that indeed the flights were canceled. A certain period goes by after they've sort of amalgamated a certain group that's following this, and then that official site sort of bandages it up, which means that if any of those people start to widen their group and say, take a look at this, the flights were canceled, they go back, they see the bandaged version, and then they start to question their friend that told them about it, and the friend that told them knows that, well, at one time before the bandage took place, you could see the evidence on an official site that the flights were canceled. These flights never took off. But because it was bandaged, the new group says, oh, this looks fine to me. The flights went off. So what you've done is, so they've isolated them. This is why I'm saying the purpose I wanted to do of this show and working with you in Black Operations is the psychological effect of somebody who knows something that the regular society doesn't, either because it's been fed to him and then he's under all of the constraints of secrecy that you're talking about, or because he has investigated it more than the regular television cultivated person is inclined to do. So how do you bring people together? How can
the first step is to adequately define what we mean by a black operation. It's very, very simple. A black operation is something that's connected to a need-to-know basis. So it's not even a relationship between the average people and people in the black world. It's people within the black world themselves that have a need to know. So that's what they call a black operation.
But if you learn,
it's a compartmentalized need-to-know program.
But what if you have figured out by yourself something that someone in a black operation knows? You're going to automatically have a resonance and an empathy with him.
If you figure out something what about that?
What Shawn is.
I'm not quite sure.
Shawn is saying that it's information given on a need-to-know basis.
Mm-hmm.
So what did Rosalie Grable need to know about there being no airplane? For some reason, she was just very perceptive, looked at it, and all of a sudden, she's instantly ejected or enters into a realm where people were given that information on a need-to-know basis.
The tactical information, you can figure out exactly what happened, and you can tell the world what happened. But unless you know the players involved, the agencies involved, the logistics involved, the actual program name, operation name, there's no damage.
Unless you know that.
You have to know the logistics of how the operation, who was involved,
Yes.
who gave the orders.
Yes, but
So that's where you
still
get in
have
trouble.
But you still have that emotionally devastating responsibility of knowing something that most people don't, and I don't think that can be de-emphasized.
Well, it's not. Take the UFO thing. A lot of people have seen UFOs, and it's officially denied until you go deeper into the black operations, and it's like, of course.
Right.
You know?
It's part of it. I hate to say it. It's a personal experience. Everything is a personal experience when you get into this information. Because,
Why you hate to say that?
Well, because unfortunately we can't get enough people and garner consensus in order to bring a movement about without it being fractured. As you mentioned last night in your show, there's a division that's happening. There's agent provocateurs. I mean, Shawn and I have been called agent provocateurs when you bring this information because
Right.
it's a double think, triple think.
Right.
There's an agenda involved, and I think people complicate things needlessly. But I do think that in the end, when you look at this information, it's an initiation process. So when you dig a little further down the rabbit hole, okay, and I think it's apropos, when you dig a little further, you realize that there's another layer to this, and then there's another layer, and then there's another layer. And these are contingencies. This is part of it. I'll give you a point. What took down WTC 1 and 2 and Building 7? Most people would say fuel and the structural damage caused by the airplanes caused the pancake collapse. That's ingrained in the psyche of people. That's the first contingency. Okay, if that's compromised, what's the second contingency? Explosives. Okay, but that's not what they're trying to hide. That's in case that cover's blown, then you have to hide the real program, which has been said, directed energy weapons or acoustic technology, which would cause embrittlements. And then maybe we're going to find out that there's another technology behind that we're completely unaware.
And the reason for that is that
That's
you have organizations that specialize in the investigation of any event.
Covert organizations? Or
No. On the surface, you have the NTSB that looks into the crashes of airplanes. You have the FAA also looking into it. You have FEMA looking into things. You have other organizations.
NTSC, NIST.
NIST, the National Institute for Standards Technology. They're looking into it. And if you use a black program that's unacknowledged, that nobody knows about, they're not going to have the language or understanding to explain what happened. Flight 800, for instance.
Right.
It's yet to be explained what ignited the central fuel tank of that airplane.
Yeah.
They still don't
That's
know.
unprecedented in aviation history. And
Because they don't have an understanding of the technology or the language to explain exactly what happened.
Unless
That's
you
the
get into,
ultimate
like,
way
the
of covering
missiles.
up. That's the ultimate way of covering up.
it's a part of the lexicon. If you don't have all the words to be able to construct a sentence, you've got a problem. And we're dealing with that type of technology and that understanding of how certain events have happened.
That's why it would be very important if they did. If we accept the fact that Tower 1 and 2 did not come down because of jet fuel, and certainly NIST doesn't say
Well, it's even
that
more,
Tower 1 and 2 came down because of the pancake theory.
It's more-
They step back from that.
Well, let's go. It's even more ridiculous that it's come out now that Sunder has said that Building 7 came down. Some Sunder, I forget the gentleman's first name, but the spokesperson or the head of NIST, as evaluation of the collapses of the towers, essentially said that Building 7 came down because of office furniture and paper, and that it essentially compromised the core column in the building. Now, if that isn't an elephant hanging from a daisy,
Because all buildings are built for redundancy. I mean, it would never be one column that would bring down any particular building, and I would challenge any architect that would defend that
There's
position.
videos of Larry Silverstein saying, pull it. There's the videos.
Yeah, but that's part of the cover-up too. Because they're not hiding explosives. That's what Clay and Shawn.
I had a gentleman.
Well, we're talking. I think that Building 7, they brought it down with a different technology than, say, they brought down Tower 1 and 2. I think Building 7, at least from a superficial viewing standpoint, it looks like a traditional progressive collapse, demolition. The
Except
exterior.
only if you look at what was on television.
Right. My
No,
presupposition here is that we're looking at what we think is.
There's one
But still,
eyewitness that saw it explode up.
It's at the near. It's collapsing at or near the free fall rate of gravity and in its own footprint. That's a problem.
And that wouldn't happen with
No.
controlled
No.
demolition.
And if anybody says otherwise,
Building 7?
yeah, Building 7 fell at near the free fall rate of gravity.
Yeah.
So
And in its own footprint. Because
Yeah,
one
yeah.
column gave way because of office furniture burned.
Involved
caused
yeah.
affected the tensile
So-
strength, which caused this progressive.
As
collapse.
Stephen Jones says, Dr. Stephen Jones says that it violates the law of the conservation of momentum.
Stephen-
You have impedance. The
But just
lower
a second.
floors were in place.
Just seconds. I have a problem with Stephen Jones because he buried cold fusion. Like Nikola Tesla felt that he had an invention that would stop war.
But here's the problem.
he had
Paula.
what would he call those things?
No. This is the big issue. I'm not going to accuse you of this. It's called bathwaterism.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Let's just consider this. Yes, let's just say that maybe
Maybe
the fact that Stephen Jones did bury cold fusion.
Maybe he was getting funding on another project at that time. And
No,
that
but thermite doesn't explain anything.
No, but the cold fusion. He may have buried the cold fusion thing in the past. Okay, but what Clay is saying is that he may have been wrong on that particular issue, right?
Not wrong, complicit in a burial process.
He may be complicit and guilty on the cold fusion issue, but we can't throw that out. We can't throw his analysis out on Tower 1 and 2 because of that.
Yeah,
No, but
just
his
because
analysis-
he's off on one thing doesn't mean he's off
Yes,
on all
but the
of it.
thing is, they tried to do a thermite demonstration, and it just doesn't work. Thermite absolutely
Well,
doesn't.
they're not saying thermite at all.
But
No.
what is?
There-
That's
there-
what Stephen Jones says.
Yeah,
He
and
says
I don't
the
agree with-
Stowers
I-
came down with thermite.
I believe
and
that
you would
thermite
need so
was
much. You'd
used.
have boiling pits of this of metal that the peering, fireman would have his face melted off if it was a thermite. And they pulled those pictures the next day.
Stephen Jones asserts that thermate was used because of the presence of sulfur, bringing down Tower 1 and 2. I believe that that's an impossible scenario, only because the entire building would have had to have been demoed. It had to have been set up and demoed in such a way that it would have been prohibitive. So what I believe they did is they put thermate in very critical areas of the building, and then they used an unacknowledged special access program, a directed energy weapon that nobody knew about. And Clay and I are leaning towards what is called embrittlement technology or ultrasonic technology. Actually, I ran this idea across a gentleman who was involved. I don't want to get too specific because I don't want to mess him up, but he flies the president around in a particular aircraft.
We'll just keep it broad. And
Two guys, young guys. I don't want to mess them up.
They
'cause
demonstrate energy weapons on 16.
I ran the idea past him, and the guy goes, "That's brilliant," because I know for a fact that they have that technology.
Uh-huh.
And also, not only that, is that his father, I believe, was it an engineer, Shawn?
His uncle.
His uncle was an engineer, and he said there's absolutely no way that what the
Tower 1 and 2 could have come down
The government's
because of jet fuel. No way.
or structural. According
Now,
to their,
the idea of
the government's
knowledge is that the better your knowledge is, the more successful you're going to be, right? Unsuccessful people are unsuccessful because they're operating with less knowledge. So what has more knowledge done for you? Whether you've gotten it by figuring it out yourself or whether you have a source.
Success also, you have to be permitted to succeed.
Who gives you permission?
Well, you can have obstacles put in your way where you fail.
Okay.
So success is a relative kind of term.
Well,
You can have personal success.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
That's
personal
what I mean.
success.
Does this knowledge give you personal
it's a
success?
spiritual success. It's not going to be a monetary success because
Doesn't have to be.
you're within the system. No matter whether we like it or not, we're still caught in the system.
Does it make you happy?
It's not a question about happy. It makes me, if anything, content that I'm understanding the machinations behind it.
Then you're
It's
more
the
relaxed.
truth.
You're more relaxed then.
Well,
You're not
it's-
on edge because you know.
You can live with yourself.
Even if you have to go through a grief process.
You can look in the mirror and say, "I'm looking at this. I'm doing the best I can. I'm working through this information as best I can."
Everyone wants the truth. It's just how conditioned are.
I don't think everybody.
You don't think everyone wants the truth
because if the fire department, and there's some good guys out there, they're caught in a terrible trap along with the police department because they're within the system, so they can't afford to go to that truth.
Well, they
yes,
believe in
well said.
But eventually they believe in another truth, or a means to an end. The worst thing that ever happened to humanity is accepting the notion that the means justify the ends. Okay, that's the worst thing that ever happened, because what it does is, if you're a fireman and you're covering up the deaths of your compatriots that fell in 9/11, because you genuinely feel that at the end of the day, the United States of America needs to survive because we have the greatest country in the world, and that our democracy or the representative republic, if they even have the mind to say that, is the last bastion of hope. They're willing to ignore digging into a certain area. They suspend their belief for a greater. And I believe that that's probably true, because I think at the end of the day, everybody really wants to do good.
Because here's the thing, Paula, is that once you get into looking at the truth and you open yourself up to it, it requires a spiritual acknowledgement to say, okay, I know something's not right here. I'm going to look into it. And when you look into it, it requires, if you're not being hypocritical, it requires an action.
If you want to get psychiatric
and what's the
about
action?
it.
But I don't want to get Freudian.
Come on, get Freudian.
But if you want to get psychiatric about Clay and I, we moved about 15 times in 21 years. So our roots have never been in anything. We don't have it in us to dig our roots so firmly into an ideology, because we continually move. So I guess
in an ideology,
free.
Well, we don't become ideologues on anything, because we had to adapt. We move so often that we never had roots.
Well, I have a question. It's like, don't you sort of fear for your life when you have all this very potent information?
No, I don't, because
you're wary.
Yeah, you're not careless. That's for sure. But it's
I had Paula make out a will when she went out to Brooklyn to meet some guy who only wanted to meet her alone in Brooklyn to see some photographs of the 9/11 thing.
That's dangerous.
It was a
Let me give you an anecdote.
No, it was a photograph showing a lady
dangerous.
waving from an empty hole that NIST has, and you can see the hole is completely empty. There's not a shred of an airplane. And he couldn't have been there because she's waving for an hour. What astonished me was the guy that took the picture believes there's an airplane in there. I know he believes it. He was proudly blowing it up on his computer. He made it lighter so you can look into the hole, just so I would know that this was a real picture. I said, some people are saying this isn't a real picture, and he was so offended. However, I was suspicious because on the proof sheet, there were only 2 pictures of that, and then all the other shots were radically different. So my theory was that picture was fed to him from somebody who took it from a helicopter, because it looks level, and that would have to be the 93rd floor. Whereas the highest building that he could have taken it from was 40 floors.
Well, here's a presupposition.
It wasn't scary because the photographer's mind control. That's the point.
People jumped that day. We all agree that did happen.
Jumpers, yes.
Yes, okay. And what's been told to us is because people were being asphyxiated by the fumes or because of the heat. What if they jumped because the particular type of weaponry that was used didn't allow them to stay there?
What would that do?
What would that be?
Stick your head in a microwave.
Yeah.
And would you want to keep your head there? You'll try to escape it no matter what. Now, this is strictly...
Or the sonic.
This is, yes, it's strictly a presupposition.
It's
a theory. And I just want you to, but I think it's something to be aware of, and that should be looked into.
Yes,
no,
definitely.
everything we've offered here is a theory of Tower 1, 2 coming down.
Right.
The reason being is we don't have the forensics. They destroyed it.
But neither does the government. The government doesn't have the
So they have a theory too.
Yeah.
So now we have competing
But see,
theories.
that's the thing. Is that
But then the government is limited. What if it was an outside job?
by the way, when we use the word government,
Yeah.
we use that in the context of the unelected second and third tier people who revolve between government and the multinational corporations.
Right.
And I like to call it the powers that be, the PTBs. And they are they are the ones that would be called the controllers, or the ones privy to the special access programs.
What about the weapons that make people complicit? I actually did a show where I got an article written in an Air Force journal that was soliciting investment in new weapons, and the weapons was to convince people that you're trying to conquer, to just sort of go along with it. And you could actually, I mean, I know with microwaves you can make monkeys do repetitive acts in cages. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, well, it's a non-lethal weapon, and they're using microwave technology. Actually, 60 Minutes ran a special where they showed a crowd control.
Makes you feel like
they pass it off
the epidermis is on fire.
in a military scene. For instance, a mob of Shias or Shiites in Baghdad who were converging on a scene. They pointed, and then they would scramble because of the heat that they would feel from it.
You pointed a microwave weapon at them?
Yeah, it was from the truck. This actually, they were showing that technology as early as 2000. It was in the New York Times. They showed the truck and the non-lethal weapon.
Do you think there's benefit in figuring this out, or you think we should just go along with what television tells us, just to have a more easy life in synchrony with everyone else who's watching television?
I think being ignorant is very dangerous, because you're at the whim of power, of where the purveyors of power want to direct you, and I think that can make people very fearful, very afraid.
History's always been a conflict between the collective and the individual. And once the individual gives up to the collective, then essentially you've lost your humanity at the end of the day. Because human beings at the core are very because of this sense of self. I don't want to say narcissism, but the sense of self. When it's exaggerated, it becomes narcissistic. But when they lose that sense of self and they give themselves over to a collective, then you've got real problems because there's no checks and balances. It's like the notion of the Federalists at the beginning of this country in conflict with the state rights people. If you didn't have that dialectic happen, those two polarities coming together and crash, this country probably would not have survived.
So you guys are getting deeper and deeper into the truth with these connections and informants you're making.
Well, this is the thing with our source in terms of the UFO phenomenon. It's helped us understand the detail of how power moves, and that's really important. I mean, people may understand that there's a conspiracy, and they may understand it's an inside job. But what you have to know exactly how to go from A to Z. You can't skip it, because once you know what B and H and P and Q, and it's that helps you understand the machination. That gives you greater insight to understand the real control, the real power. What was the saying? It said, I don't know, was it Goebbels that said it, or was it Hitler? He said, the greater the lie, the more that people will believe it. But it's the details that you have to keep secret that is so important to understand that.
That's why, like, I'm sure that Paula, when you look at what you believe, your head spins when people don't understand, because you understand the very specific details connected to your belief system.
Well, no, not specific details. Like I'm saying, I feel most for Rosalie Grable, the first person, regular person, not in a black operation, who just perceived there's no airplane in the first strike.
That's a detail.
And that's a detail?
Yes, it is.
To me, it's like the emperor's
So
wearing no
build
clothes. Is that a detail if the emperor's wearing no clothes?
Yes.
Yeah, because you may be the only one that's acknowledging that. That's a matter of perception.
Okay, but here's my point, is that, okay, let's say you have all the details and all the knowledge. You still don't have any power to do anything about it.
No, it's going to be a personal experience. That's right.
So what do you do next? I find that when I deal with a lot of people in these various groups, they get further and further alienated and they get more and more unhappy, and they, it's the Raskolnikov kind of syndrome.
Right.
They get further and further removed from society and start acting kind of erratically.
Well, that can definitely happen. I know what you mean. But here's the deal.
What were you saying, Glenn?
Okay,
Shawn.
Shawn?
If the individual gives up and no longer pursues his or her own truth, how they perceive it, they give up.
Mm-hmm.
It's much like a team losing, a baseball team. You have 9 people, okay? And it's statistically very difficult to prove how 9 people could go into a batting slump. But it happens all the time. An entire team will go into a batting slump because human beings have what they call morphic resonance. Mm-hmm. There's this invisible connection in all of us that affects everybody. So even when the individual is ostracized, marginalized, his or her attempt to fight that collective move will improve the system. You can't ever give up.
Well, Ken Kesey, he just died recently, by the way, and he came up with the hundreds of bunker syndrome, and there was every reason to say that he was debunked.
They said it wasn't true.
No, but they.
It's an urban myth, supposedly.
But I do know that when I have a thought about something, that thought transfers because that person says, "Hey, I was just thinking about that thought."
Rupert Sheldrake
what's that
proved it
phenomenon?
with his pets. Pets know when their owners are coming home.
Well,
He was just
right.
So there's a psychic connection.
So in other words, you're saying by studying something as gruesome as these topics of the towers coming down and jumpers and why were they jumping and things, that we can digest such negativity and give as a beneficial gift to the rest of our society that ostracizes us for even considering this and even questioning.
It's
they will be benefited.
The yin and yang, and Paula, you guys could probably talk to me a little bit more about this and inform me. But in order to understand the light, you got to be able to understand there's a dark.
And accept it. Be compassionate.
Well, I don't know if we can be compassionate towards evil.
You have to be at least objective enough to look at it without attacking it. You have to be able to step back and say, well, why did this particular person murder X number of children? And you step back and you start to understand the psychosis involved there. Humanity at the end will be benefited. But a lot of people can't do that. They refuse to really delve into that kind of analysis.
But I think it has to do with changing paradigms. It's sort of like if, many people sort of in the revolutionary period were fighting against slavery, they never saw that slavery ever got abolished until after they were already dead, but they set the seeds that eventually came to fruition.
That's another thing is that, you talked about the Civil War, I take it.
No. The Revolutionary War. There were people that were abolitionists, and unfortunately my family held slavery in the Revolution, and we fought the Civil War because of it. But anyway, sorry.
Charlestonians.
What?
Charlestonians.
Yeah. People who signed the Declaration of Independence and basically made us a slave country, and then we ended up having to fight the Civil War.
She's working on that, Carmen.
It was my family. But
she had
I'm
to
just
go
saying
on
that there were
Howard Stern.
people that were abolitionists, and in any kind of great paradigm shift, you're going to have, even when they were saying that germs don't exist.
All right, Molly, this is a good question, what would be the perfect paradigm shift in order to get people out of their slumbers? Wholesale, en masse.
You mean like a UFO?
Well, I didn't want that.
Sorry. No,
you mean like 2017 when the contact is really going to happen? I don't know if that's really going to be a positive shift. It depends on what the response is.
Well,
it could be a worldwide panic.
It may be painful, and to give an analogy, maybe a rite of passage. For instance, a woman having a baby. It's very painful, but the reward could be great. I think
I'm just not sure that the fact that the UFO lands on the White House lawn is really
that would be disinformation, because now it happened only in the United States, and we all know that. Let's just say the Bush administration was in control of that holographic technology.
Well, it's interesting you talk about holograms because, for example, when I first saw the planes allegedly hitting the towers, I thought, wow, this is like some bad disaster movie. You know,
movie. That's
Well,
what she said.
well,
Even my
here's
mom
the
said it's like
presupposition
looking
is
at a
that
cartoon.
here's what we have to, and I've been dealing with this on Open Minds Forum. We've talked about this issue at length. Is that if we have, according to our guy, by 2017, an unambiguous parking of extraterrestrial ships over more than one city, where people say, where the media can walk out their door at NBC and ABC and CBS and they can't ignore it because the king up there has his clothes on or doesn't have his clothes on, and we can't ignore it. What will be the fallout? What will happen? How will it be received? Will there be panic? But more importantly, it cannot just happen in this country.
But do you think this is really going to uplift humanity?
It'll change people's perception that we're not alone, which will open up possibilities in academia and in science that that they've been here for a very long time. They have always been here, and that we, in turn, will perceive ourselves different in the cosmos.
Well, we say always in terms of civilization.
Right,
They've
civilization.
been here probably, the particular ET race that our guys interacted with has been here at least to about 4,000 BC.
Humanity takes on a
Must be
different
early.
spectrum.
Can you
We
elaborate?
No,
want
at least
something different.
all he knows is that because they did reference the pyramids.
Well, yes.
Can you elaborate what
Which
you just said?
might be 5,000 to 10,000 years older.
I'm lowballing it. The pyramids could be much older, okay? But they
I don't want to miss
Definitely
this
old.
point, guys, because I want to go back. Okay,
Sorry,
so
go
the other theory or the other hypothesis is that this is a manipulation. That this will be a hoaxed invasion. That's a negative connotation. Or a hoax flyover, holographic technology, in order to further facilitate the fear mongering and the consolidation of
A fascist state.
resources and economies in order to move us into a collective environment. Now, that's called the Report from Iron Mountain, and if you haven't read it, folks, you should all read that book.
What's it called again?
It's called the Report from Iron Mountain.
Iron
a
Mountain.
desirability and feasibility for peace.
And it's to understand how the war-making process, the war-making machine facilitates the drive of moving civilization in a particular direction.
The Kennedy administration had funded a think tank in Hudson, New York. They invited
In
experts in
63,
there, and they
19,
examined, can we
61,
have peace
63.
without war? And
That has to be looked at, has to be understood, because there could be a manipulation in place, but it may not be a manipulation.
And they came to the conclusion that the authority of the state over its people resides in its war powers. It's the most efficient way to control people. In fact, when they
Fear of an outside enemy.
The boogeyman.
The guy wrote that book, The War Economy, War as a Rocket, in the 1920s.
Smedley Butler.
Smedley
Smedley
Butler, right.
Butler.
Yeah.
But that's the point, is that we've had to create the Osama bin Ladens of the world, the boogeyman, and as the one sitting in his cave that was able to control an operation against a $370 billion defense budget and a $30 billion intelligence budget, was able to overcome. I mean, that's ridiculous.
The Muslim James Bond. I mean,
Well,
come on.
it goes beyond the pale.
But in terms
People
of economics, they determined from this particular study report from Iron Mountain, they determined that war is very efficient because it's so wasteful. If you go ahead and you put a lot of people to work creating social programs, it becomes what they call institutionalized spending. It becomes non-discretionary at that point. And you can't pull money out of those programs as easily. With war, it's very easy. You can jack up the Defense Department expenditure. Under Clinton, it was what, $300 billion? Probably even less. It was in January of 2000, it was about 310. But prior to that, it was about 260 to 250 billion dollars a year. We are now spending $465 to $500 billion a year just on the DoD. We're not talking about the war in Iraq.
What's DoD?
The Department of Defense. We're not spending it on.
Defense,
which was
Just on the Department of
the
Defense.
DoD was formed during the national
even.
security. I don't want to keep Sean's. The DoD was one of the organizations or entities formed during the 1947 National Security Act. DoD, CIA, National Security Council, Department of Energy, and the Air Force separated from the Army.
Right. So they determined that war is most effective because you can pull money, you can cut funding, reduce funding, you have more flexibility. But more importantly is you have waste. You can throw a lot of money into the Department of Defense and not overheat the economy. Because what happens is you're dumping a lot of money into weapons programs that are not going into consuming. You're not building couches.
But why is that good?
Because, well, it's
Totally disposable.
it's good in terms of injecting money into the GDP without overheating the economy. It gives them flexibility. And you can control people. You can take the youth that are aimless and put them in the military,
The
which they've
welfare
done.
state and the warfare state we're dealing with.
Lots of jobs. You can also target certain districts that build weapon systems. Now, you know who started that?
Lots of
That was
jobs.
Kennedy.
That was Kennedy.
Kennedy
Lots-
started that with the TFX program, where they
From
were
Vietnam. He started.
But
prior
here-
to Vietnam.
Well, this is
but
interesting.
you-
Reagan picked up on this later, but Sean, go ahead, Sean. Why don't you continue?
Well, essentially, Kennedy and his people looked, well, you know, we're going to have an election in '64. We lost this particular district and that particular district to Nixon. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this very expensive, I think it was $6 billion program, and we're going to infuse it into certain areas where we lost, built manufacturing department-related, defense-related industries there. We're going to put a lot of people to work, and we're going to win those districts.
So what did Prouty say in JFK? He said the health of any economy is its ability to make war. It resides in its
The
war.
authority
Because-
of the state over its people resides in its war powers.
Are you-
And this is one of the reasons why the first thing they ever do when a new president comes in is he renews
That
the
was
War
Prouty
Powers
quoted it,
Act,
I'm sure.
where you essentially are transferring power away from the Congress into the executive branch. It's called the Unitarian theory of
That's what
government.
Obama's even coming out right now and saying that. I'll go into Iran.
Right,
He's saying
right.
that.
When in reality, going into a particular area is the responsibility of Congress. If we want to find the
Except Congress didn't approve of Iraq.
That's right.
right,
This
but
is-
if you're under a war, if you're under a war power situation, an emergency situation, the authority has been ceded over to the executive branch. This is why
by
Bush,
law,
through
not by
executive
Constitution,
order,
by law.
is initiating these unilateral policies exclusive of Congress.
Even if war has not been declared.
That's
Even
constitutional.
war has not been actually declared since
Right.
1941.
That's
constitutional.
But see, we're dealing with two different paradigms here. We're dealing with two different agendas. Is that we have a constitutional, the color of law under the Constitution, which is not being adhered to, but you're dealing under, if I could say, maritime or admiralty law or corporate law, which would fall within the Emergency Powers Act, which was FDR, right?
Yeah, I mean, what
Sorry.
you know, this is such a
That's-
involved topic because what you're doing is you're getting into the transformation of the American government into what we know as the United States corporate government, and the authority of the states have been ceded over to this centralized area we know as Washington D.C.,
The 10,000 square,
which was incorporated in 1871.
10 square mile area of
Right.
Washington D.C.
And it's that 10 square mile is the seat of government in the United States. It was considered the United States of America. And you were originally, prior to the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, you were a citizen of your own state.
Except
You were a
can't-
sovereign of the several states, of the
Right.
state that you were
Except
born
the
in.
district isn't represented.
But what you,
No, not in Congress, but it's considered the seat of government where, through what they call federal enclaving, licensing, the tentacles of that 10 square area we know as Washington D.C. its tentacles have been reaching into the states. You know, a perfect example is highway funds. If each state did not approve of raising the drinking age to 21, the federal government said, well, you're not going to get federal highway funds. So through that coercion, the states have ceded
Right.
authority over to that 10 square mile we know as Washington, D.C. And it's interesting, if you really look at the Declaration of Independence, one of the usurpations of King George III was that he was legislating in all matters whatsoever,
Right.
not giving us any say. Okay? Well, if you look at the Constitution of the United States, in that area we know as Washington, D.C., the one of the authorities it was given is to
Article 1, Section 2, Clause
to
17.
legislate in all matters whatsoever. The same usurpation that we accused King George of doing, we endowed the.
So there's a little bit of a double cross, guys. But see, here's the key: is that before we jump down the founding fathers' throats, is that they had to play ball too. They were under a master.
Well, who was the master?
Well, the master is always probably in my opinion, has been European royalty.
Really, even though they were revolting against.
Never be a debtor nor a lender be. We borrowed to fight King George III.
From
France.
So what
We borrowed $40 million. We couldn't pay it back.
Right.
Anyway.
What the founding fathers did in order to create an enlightened society was that it's believed that we've created this free nation, and that's not necessarily true. What they did was they cracked the door open for those who would look and try to find and understand those who control the situation, and hope that there would be other citizens who would break it wide open. And that's an initiation process.
This is why when Franklin came out of the Constitutional Convention, he goes, "What have you done?" And he said, "Well, we've created a republic. If you can keep it."
Or I thought he
So
said if it becomes a democracy, it'll take a bloodbath to get it.
I always
back.
have a problem with democracy. We're going to spread democracy throughout the world.
That's
No.
what he said.
The founding fathers thought that the worst rule of a nation or a government or a people was democracy.
Be ruled by majority because
That's mob rule.
Mob rule.
it is.
But how, like for example, how can the information that you guys have discovered take us beyond where we are right now?
And let me ask.
My personal belief is that people need a serious wake-up call, and there's only one way they're going to do it. And I do believe it's the ET hypothesis.
Really?
I think that the most important issue is to wake people up, is to acknowledge that we're not alone. Once you open that Pandora's box, there is no going
What
back.
it is you're redefining the pyramid. All of a sudden, the elites, the alleged elites, and I know probably nobody here accepts the concept of their, elites, and personally. I'm talking about you don't accept people as these people up there as your elite.
Well, elite means élire. It's French for
And they haven't
to
been
elect.
elected.
We never elected these people.
Right.
But anyway, I totally agree with you about the ET changing the consciousness, but you're also saying two different things. You're saying there's this whole government control where they're keeping a lid on it, and then you're saying there's this movement towards opening and opening the secrets.
If we accept the fact that the government is controlling this, okay,
Yeah.
the cover-up,
The cover-up, yes.
you can bet your bottom dollar that either they're ignorant of it, there are congressmen and senators that are completely ignorant of it, or they're being coerced not to open it up.
By the black government.
Well, because the structure is that we have a corporate structure that you cannot become a senator in this country unless you spend tens of millions of dollars. And that requires lobbyists, that requires fundraisers, that requires corporations. It's not by accident that the corporations don't pay taxes, because they don't want the corporations to pay high taxes. They want the corporations to take their money and manipulate
Right, the Congress.
Congress, throw their money in areas where they want to go.
Well, here's the other thing: is that this is why when people say the government was behind 9/11, I always just go, "What are you guys talking about? The government couldn't legislate themselves out of a bathroom. Define government.
Yeah.
Define what do you mean by government?"
And I want to define something here. There's a misnomer about shadow government and satellite government. These are two different things. A shadow government is a government that parallels our own government when there's a catastrophe. Okay? They have a second government in place ready to run. That's the shadow government. That's not what's in secret. Although it's in secret, you don't really, it's kind of screwed up.
Continuity of government.
Right. Continuity of government would be a shadow government. Satellite government is exactly what Clay said. These transnational figureheads that move in and out of government and corporations.
Is that black ops?
Well, no,
They use black ops, but they're not black operatives per se.
It's Wayne Madsen wrote a wonderful book. I highly recommend you read it. It'll kind of give you an idea exactly the type of control that's out there in terms of black operations. What's the name of the book?
Which one?
The first one we just read.
Jaded Task?
Jaded Task, brass plates, cutouts, black ops, okay?
Big oil black.
And, yeah, you should read it. And that gives you an understanding of multinational corporations and their institutions or their funding, where they get it, and how they move it, and how they control the lobbyists. And
how's it
But
possible?
it all seems so depressing to me. You know, it makes you feel completely. I understand it's the truth. It just makes
No,
me
it might not be the truth.
feel powerless, and it's like, and so I can't do anything about it.
It's almost like you're an alcoholic, okay, and you're drinking yourself into oblivion, and you wake up and you say, I just feel absolutely terrible, and you wake up and you look in the mirror, and you got to say, you know, I really screwed up. I'm an alcoholic. That's the first step, right? To admit.
Yeah.
So the first step people have to do is admit that they've lost their government. That's the first step. If you don't make that choice, you can't do anything about anything.
Yeah, but what if deeper investigation shows you never had a government?
If that's where it leads, then so be it.
Right.
But we haven't done that as a people, as a general. Some people have done it as individuals, but not as a people. We have to define exactly what we are. And you know, Clay and I have always said that if you really want to understand how things are, you have to first understand how power works.
right,
Because if you don't know how power works, you can always be manipulated.
we're not a ufologist.
Okay,
Okay,
Shawn.
that's interesting.
People accuse us of being ufologists. We're not ufologists in the sense.
Research the whole thing.
You know, buffs that's a compliment.
He's
That goes
teasing
back
you.
to a 19th century term where I believe it had to deal with firefighters who knew exactly how firemen or fire started, and they had a badge that was buffed, and they were experts. So, but
I didn't even know that.
yeah, I may be all. I have to ask Jim Mars again. He told me, and I may have all messed it up. But it's like this is not a hobby; it's a way of life, and that's another mind
And we've
control
all-
term.
What's a way of life? Investigating
It's
to know
truth.
more?
Just
Searching for the truth.
looking for the truth, looking where power comes from. That truth changes, by the way, because
Of course.
once you get to that point, then you realize, oh, wait a second, there's a little bit more to this, and then you take it apart, and there's a little bit more to it, and you keep going with it.
But so with your informant, is there now a split happening within the black and the shadow?
What's
of the
going on?
world?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Al. What's going on is that here's the hard part that people don't understand. Shawn, I clarified, this is not a Department of Navy initiative.
The information connected to releasing
To our source about disclosure contact, okay? The process. This is an element of people within the Navy who are pushing it forward. And there are elements within the Air Force, the Army, and the Marines who are doing the same thing.
What are they
But it's
pushing
not
for?
an overall program.
What are they pushing for?
They're pushing to release information to the public, and then once it's released to the public, then you have entities that react to that, and you create a chain reaction.
So you're part of this program.
So you can't keep moving.
Yeah.
So it moves to a point of critical mass where the secrecy and everything cracks.
But the multinationals want to keep it suppressed, don't they? Well, they don't
Well,
benefit from this.
I don't think it's as monolithic as that.
No,
really
I don't either.
All right.
I think there's people, when we say multinationals, are there people in power who benefit from this? Yeah, but I mean, if we look at where the world's going now, they're not going to benefit because unless they've got their own spaceship and they can DD out of here somewhere and survive what's going to happen to this planet.
Do you think they can? I've heard that.
According to our guy, no, because
Your source?
yeah, our source, because first of all, humans are very frail. Now, this is one particular point of view. This doesn't mean that there's maybe other programs that other groups are associated with. That
You know,
we're-
no country clubs on the other side
Well,
of
I
the moon
don't,
kind of thing?
I don't know, but the thing is that
So I'm in contact with another guy that says, you know, another particular guy went way off world, went into to another galaxy.
Galaxy with ETs.
Yeah, and he went there enshrouded in a gelatinous substance to protect his body.
I've heard about that.
Okay.
There's lots of abductees talking about that jelly substance that
Right.
impacts the body.
Right.
And so
Then
he
you
was
could-
put in essentially a situation of suspended animation. He's put in a gelatinous substance, and they went from point A to B. using whatever technology they use. If you're unconscious and you're not, the guy didn't have any idea how he got from point A to B. He just felt it was very far away. Our guy does not have access to that particular experience.
Program.
So that everything our guy says, we can't say, well, that's in stone and it's the way it is, and Concord, that's the way it is. We don't know that.
But with the coming out of
We only know what our guy tells us,
This
and then
particular program.
But if the ET stuff comes out, the whole cover-up for the last 60 or 200 years is blown, right?
correct.
Yeah, because
That's what I'm
then
getting.
everybody has to go back into their screenplay and say,
screenplay?
I was well. It's just
Your
I would say
script?
if you want to know what's going on, like you want to figure out what's happening, you get stuck. Shawn and I have talked about this. You get stuck on page 80. Just go back into your screenplay. You'll find the answer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what's
it's
happening?
like you go back into history, and I'm not talking the alternative history, which they're spoon feeding us in academia. I'm talking about the real history out there.
So from 2017 back to 1947, that's 70 years. From
Actually, it goes back a little farther
I
than
know,
that, but
that's
we'll use that as
the modern
a
age. The modern age is a phenomenon.
That whole secrecy then gets exposed. Everything comes out. The world becomes a peaceful planet. No
Now,
war.
remember yesterday I mentioned
No,
to
this-
Paula. I mentioned to Paula yesterday that disclosure is a political process,
Yeah.
and that contact is a physical manifestation. Okay. If disclosure happened, which is a political process, you have to offer people that have engaged in crimes,
Yes.
broken the law, immunity, or it ain't going to happen.
Say that more slowly.
You have to offer people that have been engaged in criminal actions
That's a hard
to perpetuate a cover-up. You have to give them immunity.
Yeah, the
Okay, be
people
more
who've been
specific.
lying. The people who've been
You
lying.
cannot. If they were involved in programs where people were murdered,
Why are people murdered? Oh, to cover it up.
to cover it up, right? Say you have a particular person that's leaking out information and it's tactically very sensitive, and they get murdered,
Right.
or their rights were violated, a crime was committed. You have to offer immunity to those people, because
Otherwise, they're not going to come forward.
you won't take the system and start making it more flexible.
Right.
You won't. The political process won't take place.
That has to be in place.
And believe me, I mean, I'm one of these people where I want to prosecute people.
I know you are,
You had a
because
question. You
we had
wanted
this
to say
disagreement at disclosure.
I don't want
What's
to,
Jeremy, what's your
I know,
question?
you don't wanna
Because
go there.
you raised your
Yeah.
eyebrow on something.
Well, you're talking about going back to the script, and it dawns on me, this very script, a guy's coming forward with an anonymous source who has something earth-shattering that's going to happen in 2 years, plays out every couple of years. So why do you guys believe your anonymous source this time?
Well, first of all, this has never played out ever, because our source is active.
We've seen him in uniform. We've seen his military ID. Now, that's not good enough for us either. So we've brought in 5 other researchers, 5 other people that know him, who've met him, seen his ID, seen his album, very credible people.
He's met another researcher on base in uniform with IDs present.
With orders pulled. I've been in his company when he's had phone calls from admirals. I know that he has a tracking device.
What do you mean he has a tracking device?
They has a tracking device on his keychain.
Oh, so they can know where he is.
They know where he's at.
And he's
24/7.
probably chipped.
And his history and the fact that his testimony hasn't changed, and he's gone back. If you're lying, Shawn made a very excellent point yesterday. When someone lies, they tend not to remember their lie. But however, when we tell his story, he'll come back to us 3 months later and tell us the detail. He said, "Hey, well, no, I said he forgot this and this thing." I mean, it's not indicative of lying. It's someone telling the truth.
Okay, maybe he's telling the truth,
Is it?
but maybe he's not giving good information.
I mean, there's always that possibility.
Well, wait, the liars are the ones who do remember the details. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Richard Doty.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who had credentials, who had all of that. You could go and
Do
the
you
same
know-
story, and he's Richard Doty.
Right.
Would you know?
I understand that is a possibility. We're not.
Do you know who Laurent is? You know Laurent?
Yeah.
Right.
Because Jacques Vallée discounted the whole UN meeting that you
But
know
why
about
did?
that.
Yeah, but here's the problem.
Yeah.
I have a problem with Vallée.
Now,
Why
just
didn't he
back-
pick up the phone and call me?
Do you know him?
No, I don't care if he. We don't have to know each other.
Right.
He can call me and say, "Well, who met him? You've had 6 researchers. You've seen his credentials.
Yeah.
You've seen this. You've seen that."
I'm just telling you what Vallée put
No,
out.
no,
on
no,
the
no,
internet.
Alan, I know that. I know what you're saying.
Clay
We call
are
it
very
being
familiar with
theory.
that. But the Laurent situation is connected to meetings that happened after our I don't know anything about the 13th, 14th, and 15th
I see,
meetings.
I see.
I know nothing about that.
I see.
All we know is
concerned
that the February 12th meeting, that's all we've ever offered. And
And tell us who was at that meeting, if you could. Like, what countries, what level
Well,
of...
I don't know
before we
what
go
we're
there,
talking about.
I just want to address
Okay,
the.
sorry.
No, it's okay, Alan. No, it's important. I think you bring up a good point. Discredited field, anyhow, the UFO phenomenon. What's the point?
you're going around the barn.
What's the point? I mean, who the hell is Shawn and Clay Pickering? Or Shawn and Clay Pickering?
We'd be the last person.
I mean-
If this was a PSYOPs program where they want to set up people in the UFO community, Clay and I would be the last person
It
to
doesn't
go
make
to
sense.
because we didn't have a forum.
Benowitz made sense because Benowitz obviously was in touch with people in technology, Los Alamos. So there was maybe
He was a
had
scientist.
he had some technical information.
He also
was
tripped over a
worried
very
about.
sensitive operation at Kirkland Air Force Base.
Right. Yeah, that's.
And they want to neutralize that.
So I mean, I can see why. I obviously don't agree with what he did to Benowitz, Paul Benowitz, but I can understand. I can see that picture a little clearer than ours. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm the one that pulled this guy off the street.
That's very important.
Literally, when our guy had to go back to a three-letter agency who has the largest budget, so guys should be easy to figure out here. And they say, "How did you meet these guys?" And he said, "Well, the guy just grabbed me and said, you want to come in for a beer?" And they couldn't believe it. And I have a hard time getting in the UFO community to say, I'm the one that said, "Sir, would you like to come in and have a drink in appreciation for what you're doing?" Now, don't get me wrong, guys. I don't approve of the war, and neither does he. Okay? But
Yeah, that's the irony. He does not approve of
Unless
this
he was
war
just
at all.
hanging out waiting for the invitation.
Well, how many times the guy's going to walk in front of his one?
So it's
there's
all
there's no
happens.
guarantee.
But they're still
But there's no
using-
precedent.
but
I've
they're using you guys to-
never invited another
Right.
a high-ranking officer.
But aren't they using you to get the information, which is okay, but to put this information out? You're
Yes, they
part
are.
of the,
Yes, they are. And when I confronted our guy, I said, "Use." I said, it was really bothering me one night. Shawn remembers this. I said, "Use." I said, "What do you mean by use?" I said, "Are you using us?" And he goes, "No, Clay, you got this all wrong." And he looked me dead in the eye and said, "We're using you as a conduit to push the information, you and your brother, to get this out there." And he said, "There's an acclimation program that has to happen before the 2017 date." Now, keep this in mind. This is their date.
2017.
Yes, I would like it to happen
Define
sooner.
there, Clay. Who's
Excuse me.
they?
What's
The
that?
ET date?
Who's they?
Oh, I mean,
Who are they?
this initiative by elements of the Navy and the inter-services
But
group.
they didn't determine the 2017 date.
It's this particular ET race that seems or appears to have control over other ET races. And I want to use the word control is not the right word. Who has the other ET races tend to pay deference or defer to this race is a better.
And which one is this one?
This is
a race that nobody's ever heard of.
and it's
In the UFO.
He couldn't be a part of the UFO discussion anymore because it was just too fractured.
He's right.
He's absolutely right.
And
Yeah.
he said, and also because people believe in Roswell and that people are being abducted.
That's
And I thought
that is so weird.
that's interesting, isn't it? That he would. That's it. That's his point of view. That he's.
Well, I tell Lee that he, and I take my guys. I have to say, I have to take my guys' word for it, and based off all the research out there, that I mean, all these people are lying about their abduction.
Well, our guy, his position of Roswell, make it very clear his position of Roswell. He has no first-hand knowledge about what happened in Roswell 47. None. Zip. He said, but what little he does know, something happened there of significance. And it wasn't a weather balloon.
I'm sure they still have a ship in some hangar somewhere.
I won't forget Jamali.
But let's get back to what's going to happen in 2017.
The alien race. Tell them about the
And the
alien
race.
race.
Well,
Cause this
we don't have a name for this race. They don't have a name for it. If you want a name,
They, the gods.
they being the people associated with this particular extraterrestrial, they don't. These people, the PTBs, the powers that be, the people that are in direct contact with this particular extraterrestrial species, do not have a name for it.
The Air Force.
The name would be tantamount to taking a metal bucket and dropping stones in it. That's what it sounds like. So they gave it a name, and the name is, or not they, but
Kind of like bush language.
their name for it is controllers, meaning they can control some of the extraterrestrial groups. that has a double psychological bearing on it, because the word controller is not a very
People
nice
refer to
word.
that, well, they're going
Right.
to
Sounds like
maybe
an
call it
RBC Clark.
We call it conformers,
Did
because
you just read
there's a
that?
conforming aspect of extraterrestrials who work with each other.
And also
Childhood
physically.
Zen by Arthur C. Clarke, he talks about the overlords. In that book, he talks about an extraterrestrial race coming and controlling the
But
childhood
okay.
Zen.
Once again, I think that this can be used as a tactic to terrorize people. You know, it's sort of like there's always been tales of sort of a slave hybrid, and that's what we are.
But these guys are good, right? This race is a good.
Well,
control.
our guy said
Well, we
that,
happy slaves.
that he wants 2017 to be successful because he goes, I like these guys. I don't want them to go away.
He's met them.
Oh yeah.
He's been face to face with this
Oh, yes,
slimy
he
ET character.
Yes.
Slimy?
They're not
They're
slimy.
not slimy.
No, they're sort of like morphing, right? You didn't just describe them because
They're silicon, but the silicon, it doesn't have to be slimy.
Okay, maybe they're not slimy.
All
Sorry.
right.
guys.
Wait. So what are they like?
Okay, guys. Now,
Well, I mean,
Well,
we
wait.
got to. Are we going to put this on the air? Or?
yeah, I gotta tell you, I've held off on this. I tell you why. 'Cause
You don't have to.
we got shackles on us right now. I'll
That's
tell you
fine.
why. No, it's more important. Because if we hand this information over, we're going to destroy the UN initiative.
You will just by describing these
Yes,
guys?
because it's going to get sensationalized and we're going to get discredited.
What's the
Okay,
UN
I get
initiative?
that.
The UN initiative is essentially they're using very effective high-level bureaucrats that basically go to their own nation-state people, their points of reference, their point people, and they get things done. These guys get things done. So they all meet and they decide what the problems are connected to contact. And they said, well, what's going to happen? Well, what if these? They ask a series of questions. They said, what if these things park themselves over Caracas or Tehran,
Or Pyongyang.
right, over North Korea,
Or Tripoli, Libya.
and they don't park themselves over Washington and London and.
Paris. And
But they did in Rome. A ton of people saw them.
Well, no. Well, we're talking about the event,
The 2017 event.
Guys,
the unambiguous event.
remember, these ships are going to be parked over the city for an indefinite period of time.
Well, I
So
think
you and I can go up there, and we're going to get an airplane. We're going to go throw rocks at this because I want to hear a ping. So this is not holographic technology.
Oh,
There you go.
Now that's unambiguous, right? So unless they got a
Holograms
technology.
don't-
So you're saying that
That's right.
they have the holograms now that they could make it look like.
Well,
they won't-
according
but
to
they
the
won't.
9/11, if they have that.
Well,
if
they're also
we-
2 miles long.
No, not 9/11.
No. I'm talking
can't-
about.
What did you say?
Excuse me.
Yes,
Paula,
it's
I'm
been
talking about the
increased for a while,
airplanes, the
I think.
holographic airplanes, the holographic
That's
technology.
the
Well, I
most
want to answer-
discredited theory.
Go ahead.
I want to answer Alan's question. The particular ships that'll park themselves over cities are not as big as the craft that are displayed in Independence Day. They're not
But
that big.
Stevensville craft was like they said 2 miles long.
That may be the case, but those aren't these craft.
Okay, so they're what? Whatever.
They're well, if it's the same craft that our guys saw,
Uh-huh.
it's about the size of 5 aircraft carriers.
Yeah, 5 aircraft carriers. Yeah.
And
That's
this
big.
is going to be
That's
the
pretty big,
controller's
isn't it?
crafts.
Correct.
Their
Are they-
scout ships are about the size of the Staten Island
Are they
ferry.
still
So what's
here?
the benefit?
They're not the
Are
shape of
they
the Staten
appearing
Island
now,
ferry,
these guys?
but the
Are
size
they
of the
size?
Staten Island ferry.
Uh,
It's important.
I don't know if they're appearing in some of the sightings. I think they're much more discreet. And that I can't get into.
So, no, Clay, why are you so excited about this? What's the use?
Because it's.
So we're throwing rocks at a big spaceship.
Well, the point is that if you have something up there, it can't be ignored.
And then what?
And then we can all
Changes the
say,
plan.
hey guys, look, we're not alone. Oh, geez, it's not running on the hydrocarbon because I don't see any exhaust coming out. So that means that there's got to be another technology that's allowing this ship to stay there for an indefinite period of time.
But we already have cancer therapies that show we
No,
have
but-
free energy. Why do we need that?
But that free energy is not being shared with the rest of the
oh,
human
but
race.
this will be shared.
Well, the thing
I
is
see,
that you
'cause
can't
everybody's
ignore it.
seeing it.
Everybody can't ignore it. So the academic can't turn around and say,
See, in the scientific
Academia
community, you have
can't do it
foundations.
that
In
way.
the foundations, you have objectives
You can't stop
initiated from the
peer review.
foundations. You have research, right?
everything changes.
Well, what happens is if these ET things pop up here, the scientists will go,
There's
why
no-
am I looking in this? Why am I looking in this microscope? Let me ask them.
Exactly.
But here's the problem. Now, here's the biggest concern with the people that want disclosure is what we don't want, and this is the dangerous part, is we don't want to hand off our free will
To
or
ETs.
our own ability for self-determination of how we want to proceed as a human species. Now, I know.
We
I
don't
thought
have
they
it
had the
anyway,
Star
according
Trek-
to the Black Ops.
No, but
The
it's still...
Star Trek rule.
it's
That would be for us,
non-intervention.
not them.
No, they're not allowed
They don't want to be gods.
No, but I thought they weren't allowed to interfere.
We
They're
don't
not.
have free will anyway.
But showing over,
Weapon
no, wait.
control.
Showing up over something is not interference. It's appearance.
But I mean, how,
Interference
why
would be
worry-
actually seeding
Listen,
technology.
This is important.
This is a you're bringing up a very, very subtle point, but it's a very important point. Just because you show up is not interference. Interference would be a willful act on your part, on the ET's part, to alter technology, to alter government, to alter behavior.
I thought they already
Appearance
did that.
and
So wait,
interference
why
are
would we
two.
worry about our free will if they're not allowed to interfere?
Because we don't want them genuflecting to ETs, on our new gods, right? That some people, oh my God, they've come back. Let's just say
They already
there'll
do
be
it.
some.
They're not even here.
Yeah.
Oh, they commit
But
suicide.
They're not interested.
Also, is that you come down and fix everything for us, fix our government, get rid of the bad guys at the top who created all this.
Some of the
misery.
talking points this particular ET
Talking
race
points.
is once dealt with is they're very concerned about the destruction of the flora and fauna of the planet. Very concerned about it.
Population is a huge problem.
And
What do you mean population?
They have a big
They
problem.
think we have too many?
they believe
Oh, see, I
based
don't believe that at
well
all, at all, at
whether
all.
you believe it or not is not of their concern. That's immaterial. They believe that the optimum balance point for human beings on the planet, based on our hydrocarbon system and how we behave towards other species, is about 2 billion people.
2 billion. So what's going to happen with the rest of this 8?
Now we've met Paul.
I
To be fair, I want to be
so-
fair with you.
Yeah.
Is that we met a lot of resistance with that. And
Resistance where?
Because I think it's a policy being initiated. It's information being received.
Have you ever heard of the Georgia Stones?
Yes,
It
George.
says all that stuff.
No, but I'm just saying, if you look at the baloney about global warming and so on,
Here's
that
the issue.
there's theories we don't have enough people, that you need
There's
more
so
people,
much
more
empty space.
creativity.
You ever fly over this country and see
No, it's
vast-
the infrastructure that it takes in order to support a population.
Right.
This is what you
Arable
got
land,
waste,
water.
You got waste. You've got resources. You've got in order to support people. You have.
We have greed.
But
That's
too-
the problem.
You also have the psychological conditioning of each human being in terms of the amount of space that each human being needs to be a sentient, peaceful human being. It's like the wren that needs 1,000 square feet of unimpeded forest in
But
order.
that changes from Americans to India. I mean,
Japanese.
we
Almost
would-
every psychologist will tell you that people that live in an urban environment suffer psychologically because they're in a situation that's overpacked.
We don't have that connection with nature. We should have that connection.
Let Hector say
That's an issue.
With your 1,000 square feet, I read a statistic that if you put every human being that's on the earth today, and I just read this about a month ago, you put every person on earth in the state of Texas,
Yes,
we
I've read.
will all have 1,000 square feet
Yeah.
of space. So to put it in perspective, how much space we actually take
And
up.
what's the infrastructure will take to support those?
Oh, of course. I'm not
Yeah,
going
that's
there.
where it gets
I'm
hairy.
talking about-
You know, I'm-
I have two questions, though, if I could.
Sure.
One question is, it seems that we're being prepared for, I don't know, if
An
it's too
acclimation.
much, because everything
Let's do fast forward.
from the Vatican putting out its statement, from the UN that you guys are talking about, from even Discovery Channel and History Channel, they used to be. All their shows used to end with this, the skepticism, and now they're starting to leave it more open and even
Right.
more.
It's with the ridicule factor.
The
Yeah.
ridicule factor is starting to.
And the guy who's been
starting
very
to what?
instrumental with this has been Larry King.
Yes,
Larry
he has,
King,
yes.
and God bless him, because it's really helped to get mainstream America saying, hey, these guys are not tinfoil hats or need to know what a
absolutely
vagina
right.
is.
And the question is, what do you?
Well, I didn't get what he
No,
said.
he has a
guys.
question. No, you have
I'm sorry, we're jumping.
That's the question. What do you guys think about Stephen Greer's work?
I like it, but let me just answer your one question on.
You do?
And I think it's really important. No, I thought his initial work is important.
Initial work.
Initial one.
No, but guys, this is what bathwaterism. Stephen Greer helped move that cause dramatically.
Yeah,
And let's just take
He
that.
also
No, I
talks
make-
about ragheads.
No, but
he says you've got to unite the
I don't
the
agree.
population.
But the thing is this: is that We're going
I'm
back
only-
to his
well,
initial work.
I'm
We
only
have to
talking
be fair
about
here.
that. Guys, let's just take what someone's doing is good. Let's take something that we think was very positive. I may disagree with the other stuff. I may say he's way up, but I know this is good. I know this is right. I take this and I take this and
Well,
I
what
take
is
this
it
and I
that
put
you
it
know
together.
that's right? That you're going to reduce the population and we're going to have overlords?
No, I don't want any. I
No,
don't-
that's filling
they're
in.
not allowed
That's
to be
filling in
overlords.
way too much. I mean, that's way too much.
You hit a point, and I want. Jim Mars said it, and this is where the league. Let's do the math here, okay? Since my brother and I were told on Monday, the night before, that there was going to be a February 12th meeting, and we were told, listen, guys, wait, and then release the information. What's happened since then?
Yeah.
And Jim says, well, I can't say that the meeting's happened or didn't, but I do know this. Since you guys came up to February 12th, what's happened after that? One, the British opened up their UFO files, even though they were redacted, okay? They're all redacted. The British opened up their files. The Vatican came forward and gave an official announcement to say that, yes, there's life out there. Yes, there's a possibility that exists, but they won't say it's here. And the Vatican has said that original sin is pretty much a mankind or a man-centered point of view, which is kind of saying like we're the only corporation on the planet that have a 401k plan, So the Vatican came forward. Admiral Pinoy wrote a very interesting letter, a French admiral, about pushing for disclosure, which is interesting.
Two astronauts.
Edgar Mitchell came forward. Clark McClellan, an engineer for NASA, came
Edgar
forward.
Mitchell.
But Edgar
And-
Mitchell, what about the fact that he may not have gone to the moon?
And Larry King had several programs since that February 12th, all within an 8-month span.
And
That's
you had
a
the
lot,
ABC
guys.
thing, the resurrection,
Oh.
the ABC thing of seeing is
Which was
believing.
much more positive, yes.
Oh, very positive.
And in the UN, I know there's a lot of buzz going on about these meetings. Now, they don't know which meeting because there's covers, but there's a lot of buzz going on, and that's the whole idea of what our guy says, cracking the lid, is that, it's you create a shitstorm, and pretty soon you're going to get someone that comes out and he says, yeah, well, I was there, and I saw this,
that
and
was
I
sort
saw
of
that.
phase one we accomplished, and you're saying from the February 12th, that's sort of initial.
It's still ongoing.
Yeah, so this
There
is
are
the next,
there are meetings as we
what's the
speak that are
next
continuing.
phase?
It's called action and reaction. Look, we'll go kick the cow in the ass and see what it does next. Okay, and the cow's going to do something, and then we're going to react.
See how the public reacts to all this.
Well, it's not the public.
Oh, who?
Not the public. We want the public to catch up.
Okay.
But it's the powers.
Uh-huh.
It's the powers who are reacting. We got to get them to move.
The black ops or the,
Not black
the
ops.
powers that be,
the powers that be.
the elites.
And is exopolitics, is that a UFO term, or is that something that's actually being used as something that...
Well, exopolitics. There's different
That was
type
Alfred
of
Weber's term for the community, government and ET.
It's the idea of integrating the UFO phenomenon in policy measures initiated by and understanding the phenomenon, how it's effect in initiating policy measures.
Stephen Bassett's a little naive in the way he uses it.
Clay and I go back. There's
I dealt with
aspects of
Stephen Bassett. I'm
there's
sorry to
aspects
interrupt
of
you.
Stephen. Yeah.
I mean,
Well, he's
trying to do
our guy
something
calls
good.
him a marketing man.
Oh, really? Okay.
And by the way, Stephen Bassett doesn't even realize he's already met our guy.
He has.
I won't get into that.
Okay.
That's another thing, but only because I don't want
probably
the field to
sitting
be
in the room
narrow.
about
He doesn't want to meet.
But
our
I think
guy,
Bassett, I know his heart is in the right place,
Yeah.
his head is in the right place, and it's just it's just that he's part of it too. He's been-
putting it out there.
I think he's a good man. I think he's put his money where his mouth
We're
is.
doing a culture of contact in
Yeah.
October. Jeremy's putting that on.
Right,
yeah.
So and James is doing a film, and I'm
And
doing my.
who's Jeremy? You're putting that on? And
That's where
I'm
I'm
not going to
gonna
cry
put it
spilt milk here. I'm not going to cry spilt milk. But what? We weren't even invited, and we dropped the ball in this whole UN thing.
Weren't you there
We
last
went-
year?
Yeah, but you think people would want an update?
I would.
No, but don't, Jeremy, whatever you do, I don't want you to go back and say, hey, we put the Pickerings on there. No, I don't want that,
Yeah,
okay?
this is a
No, but,
completely different.
okay.
I respect that. I
No,
respect that.
But
it is the culture of contact, and we've been part of that process pretty
Why do
heavily.
you think the UN is so
last year.
important? I find it to be
It's a
group
platform,
that's
Paula.
just very
It's-
out of touch with
It's how to
Yes.
get the UN
It's a platform.
is a logistical situation. You're able to get people from all over the world to meet in one area covertly.
Well, I let you gloss by the thing about war being good for the economy. That's only in the case if you say wealth is labor-based. That people
Well, no, I'm
need
not.
jobs
I'm not.
and so
Don't get
on
me
like that.
wrong. I'm not saying it's good for the economy. I'm talking about the think tank. Its determination was that war was the most effective way of controlling populations.
No, all of that's true if you say that wealth is based
I don't
on
think that
labor.
war is good for-
But wealth isn't based on labor.
Well,
The
Kennedy
majority
wanted
of
to make the
wealth
trans-
is from technology
Well,
and it's capital
Kennedy
ownership.
wanted to make the transition to space, the adventures or ventures in order to stop a war-making economy. Let's move to a space-faring economy. Let's take all that energy and move it
Is
to
this
space.
whole discussion predicated on the reality of Apollo? Because if so, we're having a different discussion. I'm trying to get
You
into
lost me.
reality.
I'm not.
If you cite Edgar Mitchell, Jim Mars,
Do you
there's
think-
some
No,
of these
there's-
people
Paula,
that,
you're-
or even Stephen Greer. I have very
Paula,
strong feelings
no,
about Stephen Greer.
Of
And if
course,
somebody
of
says,
course, but
if somebody says the
we're
ETs are going
asking-
to come down and we're going to have a bigger heart and we're going to unite the cosmos,
Paula.
and then in the next breath they talk about the Muslims as ragheads. I
That's-
mean,
I don't-
We're
I would agree
talking
with
about the value of
And you
Stephen
say-
Greer
and you
getting
say-
200 witnesses together, getting the testimony
400.
out. 400
No.
witnesses together, getting the testimony out, and getting people aware of it. That's the extent of I go with Stephen Greer.
And here's the
That's it.
extent about Edgar Mitchell.
But what awareness? Because later on they're going to be judging you for the follow through, and the follow through isn't there. The love in the heart isn't there. Jesus did what he did because of the miracles. He healed people. People really changed. The little boy who saw the emperor had no clothes. It was a simple observation. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean,
it's not going to be a directive
You have no
from
control
the
over
UN
the
that's
reaction
going
of when someone becomes aware of something.
It isn't.
You can
Look
be
at Shawn.
aware of a car crash. You can be aware of a car crash. But how you react to that car crash is very different.
Exactly. So
So-
who cares what the UN says or the U.S. government? You want to see it with your own eyes. You want to feel the heart with the love with your own heart.
But we
you
can't-
want to
we
get
can't-
along better. You want to
we-
know. You want to stop peer review.
I understand
shut
that.
out.
I understand that. But we can't afford to be that naive because these are government, these are international institutions in place. You got to work
We're
logistically
in
with
that
what you've
system.
got.
We're trying to get out of it.
No, I applaud you for doing what you do in your own way to move awareness along and getting people to
It's about
interact
changing
peacefully.
people. It's about changing people.
Absolutely, absolutely. But
It's about creating empathy with those who think
If
that
you're
the poor
handed
are
things from
worthless.
The truth. That way.
you're handed a deck of cards internationally. The only deck of cards we really have at this point, international, as an international organization, is the UN. Okay? So they got to go someplace. So logistically, they go to the UN. Why? Because you got to get these people from all over the world to walk in that room so you can have a secure meeting. Now, these people may be going under the cover. May be that they may be there for the Hunger Foundation and this foundation, and that, but they're there meeting on a sub rosa basis.
It seems much bigger than the UN. The UN seems very naive because if you're talking about them, they don't need the UN. They get this guy here, and no one knows. They go.
But
go
they're
some hideaway.
using the UN as a way of getting these high level bureaucrats in one room.
There's no other structure.
But they're not
Right.
like
I want to go back
they're
to
puppets.
The only one that is the only structure that exists in the world today that is anywhere in line with that has any empathy as you're talking. There's a World Social Forum. That just meets once a year, once every 2 years or something, and it's not structured. It's not a continuation.
Right.
It's not a presence that
The UN, they can have meetings. They can have meetings every other week if they wanted.
Paul, I want to go back to something. Is that, and this is what I'm not accusing you of this or anybody in this room, but this is the problem. Is that I have a big problem with Apollo and Edgar Mitchell, and
Stephen Greer.
the truth on that, Stephen Greer.
Some of the
but
things,
but I know that in some of their work, maybe earlier work, or maybe they come through, maybe like Stephen Jones after the cold fusion, and they say, hey, I screwed up with cold fusion. I'm going to make this right, so I'm going to start talking the truth about what I know about 9/11 history.
Yeah, but you say don't throw the
But let
baby
him
water
finish.
out, but there's not even the baby.
Let
Or
him finish the point because I think.
But Edgar Mitchell, he talked about an extraterrestrial presence, and based on my research, what I know, I believe Edgar Mitchell to be right on that point.
Yeah.
And I'll tell Edgar Mitchell, I said, hey, okay, yeah, you're right there. And that's one species, and I got a problem with your whole Apollo. And he'll say, well, I saw UFOs, and I'm going to say, well, how did you do that? That's impossible. I don't believe you guys went there in the Apollo program. So therefore, you're either lying or it's a mind control
Well, he
program.
never-
Or
He
he
never
went
said
on,
he saw
he went there using a
a
different
different
technology.
technology. That's another thing. But
You
that's
mean
where
like
we're at.
astral traveling?
Yeah,
The
but
UN is part of that. The UN is, I may not agree with the UN in terms of our Constitution, absolutely not. But given where we are in the world today, if we can get people together to try to move spiritually in the right direction, even if I don't agree with that form or the milieu, then I'll work with it.
What I don't get is who is pulling the strings. So your informant tells you a few things, and then you say, "Can we tell him this?" He calls someone up and says, "Hey, should I release him?" Who is the guys in charge? I mean, do you have like specifics or countries or entities or titles? Who's telling your informant these things? Who's organizing these meetings? Who's behind the scenes? Really far behind the scenes.
Specifically, if I would say, I think there are some powers that be that are looking to move in the right direction.
Is this Illuminati?
No. I think there's tiers above them that they may not even approve.
You have to look at it from a functional logistical standpoint. What organizations do you need in place to affect change? Okay, so then you start seeing the tiers. Okay, now if our guy, say, let's hypothetically, if our guy went to some place far, far away, say we went, and he came back, but in the process he was physically altered.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
Just hypothetically, right?
Okay.
So he's back in, he's in the hospital, and everybody's looking at him.
Right.
They're examining him.
Uh-huh.
Who do you think's going to visit him? I'll ask that. Who do you think would visit him in the hospital? If we want to find the power.
I can answer that.
Oh, that's a very interesting question.
Well, I'm telling you where the power is. That's
So tell us.
okay. I'll tell you. You want to know?
Yeah.
Okay. A compartmentalized executive from Lockheed, a compartmentalized executive from Raytheon, a compartmentalized executive from DuPont, a compartmentalized executive
Medical
from
people.
Honeywell,
When you say compartment, what does that mean?
Well, it's not Honeywell's not visiting them. All Honeywell doesn't know. It's like Honeywell's a nation in
It's a
itself.
black hole inside a corporation.
Correct.
Here's
That's
what
well
it is:
said.
agendas within agendas within agendas and programs within programs within programs.
But who decides who's going to be that representative?
It's not monolithic, I'll tell you that. It's not coming from some 13...
Well, someone would make a decision on who appoints, elects, whoever these guys
You
are.
have interacting transnational interests that come together and they agree on certain things. But they may have competing interests. But they do agree on some things.
But don't you think that's...
And that's determined by the compartmentalized project, the project manager, and who they decide who has a need to know.
And it doesn't always work. It just reacts. What did Ken Thomas call it? A liquid conspiracy. It just kind of, we're going to fix it, push it over here. Oh, we're going to push it over here because it's not completely controllable.
Politically, I mean, even if you look at the Executive Committee on the Council on Foreign Relations, okay, that essentially has a lot of sway over our political system, both the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee.
As if that makes any difference?
Well, but
the Democrats?
we're talking about a general participation in a group that kind of get together at some point in a process. They determine who the boy's going to be. Okay, they may be in odds with, say, the Executive Committee on the Bilderberg Group. It's not a monolithic thing here. It's a tug of war. There are many Europeans that are very, very disenchanted with what the neocons have done over here. That was not their policy. So there are vying factions here, and through this Hegelian dialectic, there's a synthesis in some way, shape, or form. And we're experiencing that right now in Wall Street.
But Wall Street, hang on now. This is why it's really, really important to understand what wealth is. It's not labor-based. It's capital-based, and that means that. I've just got to get this in. Sorry. Wall Street is practically a casino. If a really serious product wants to go to market, it has private offerings. People get together, and even your dad with the shrimp farm, that never went public. People were just. I think it was a long time.
I disagree with you.
And so Wall Street, you don't really raise money in Wall Street in order to advance technology or whatever the developments are. Wall Street's a very minor thing.
I define real wealth as sweat equity, that energy that human beings put into something. That is real, tangible.
It's technology.
And you guys-
This is where I disagree with you. Technology is a manifestation of human beings getting together and
Look at-
deciding to build something.
A horse can
But
carry
at the
more
end of the
than
day,
a
you
human
can't
being.
eat a computer chip.
No, look at even a farmer doesn't grow an apple. It's but he owns the apple tree.
Yeah.
A horse carries more than a human being, and a truck more than a horse. So whoever owns the horse, whoever owns the truck, has more of.
What you're describing is the exponential reaction to human sweat equity.
No, it's not human. The horse did the work.
At the end of the day,
truck did the work, but it's who owns
there's
it.
got to be a human being behind the technology. At the end of the day.
This is
your
what.
question. This is the question you're asking him. You're asking him who's in charge. You, Mom, are asking who's in charge.
No, I'm talking about wealth.
I know, but you use these are metaphors. They're the same. It's the same thing when you're talking about who runs the horse or who runs the black holes. It's the same concept.
And that each human being, if you talk about a limit of 2 billion or whatever, each human being is a very powerful spiritual source. That's where the power is.
Well, that's what
0
I'm
point
saying.
energy, whatever.
Well, it's, that I talked about the matrix, and there's truth in that. I think, James, we've talked about this some. But keep in mind is that this country went bankrupt in 1933. I believe bankrupt, Shawn.
Yeah.
We had to sell whatever gold, unconstitutionally confiscate gold from Americans to sell to the Europeans to pay for the debt. We couldn't do it, so what did? They traded sweat equity. They traded the birth certificates. The people who have contracted with the 10 square mile area of Washington, D.C., and they trade that sweat equity on the open market every single day.
As a future value, they said that each human being in 1933 was worth $633,000 over the life. They're going to produce $633,000 worth of goods and services, okay? And they decided at that point that they would give us all Social Security cards and measure each hour worked, and that input was to pay back the debt. But it's never paid back the debt because we've continued to go into debt. Because every time we print money, we go into debt.
But what about all the capital assets in the country? The sunlight, the earth, the rain.
The question I want to ask you, Paula, is
that?
who determines value?
It's what you let people do.
Right. So
you can't even
people
imagine the wealth.
at the end of the day
You can't
will
get it.
determine what's valuable. I mean, we can't eat gold, right? But we've all decided that gold at this point is worth $900 an ounce. That's a perception.
Right. Exactly.
But the real wealth
The construct
is someone getting up in the morning, putting their shovel into the dirt and growing something and eating it, making love, creating children. That's the real basis of wealth. And then everything else becomes a complicated manifestation of that. And even the value of it. I mean, how is it possible that oil can go up $32 a barrel in one day? At one point, oil went up $32 a barrel yesterday. That's impossible. It's a perception because people believed at that point that having money in the market is so risky that they went to the commodities market and they shifted money over there on the short sales. They're like, we're going to go in that direction. And that's a perception thing. But there's no real wealth. How much is gold really worth? I'll tell you one thing. If the whole system collapsed and I'm looking for some water here, wherever it's at,
This is going to be
This is going to be wealth. That's going to be wealth.
There's going to be fought over this, guys. And that comes from our source. I mean, that's
Oh, he's saying that's one of the things we have to be afraid
The natural,
of.
his position is, and this dovetails in something you said earlier, Gloria, Paula, is that water is going to be very, very important. You didn't say that. I just lost my train of thought. That you grab the water. I lost my train.
We're talking about what?
Water, about our
your
source.
informant said
Our source.
about the
Oh, well,
water.
you're talking about global warming, right? I'm sorry. You said that you're very suspicious about it being
We went to
man-made.
We went to Lonnie Thompson. He's at the top of the heap. Everybody passes the buck. It doesn't stand up to science.
Well, do you know what the position of our guy is?
What?
That the primary aspect of global warming is a natural reaction that the planet's going through.
we've gone through.
Now,
this
it doesn't mean that
Natural-
it doesn't mean that we haven't exacerbated the environment a little bit.
Yeah.
in terms of resources, in terms of survival.
That's what our research.
But his
points
basic
out, too.
position is
It's not-
that the planet is going through a natural
It's a
warming
celestial aspect of
The
where
sun
we
is
are
heating
around the
up.
galactic
All the
core.
planets
Oh,
are getting
yes.
hotter.
Yes, but
That's
we're
what we-
exacerbating.
That's measurable.
We're
Yeah.
exacerbating the problem in terms of resources.
And particles in
no.
the atmosphere are creating,
Well, if you have a billion people, in the Ganges Basin,
Yeah.
and they depend on the runoff of glaciers
Himalayan
melting into the
plateau.
Himalayas, and the planet's warming up, you might have a water problem situation.
China and India.
But,
Yeah.
but
And he even said, go to Google Earth
someone
and look
said
at the
the Earth's
Himalayan
actually cooling. So
plateau.
see, you're always
and
getting
let him
this.
finish.
No, we're at the, well, I mean, we're talking about a geological phase here. I mean, this phase may, I don't know how long it'll last. We may be at the end of the heating cycle before the big frost.
Well, what does your informant say?
But
though?
they're saying at some point this will happen. According to this extraterrestrial race, they have seen this event happen before.
On
It's
other
called an
planets.
ELE,
Yeah.
a
On
extinction
other
level
events.
event.
On other planets or on this
On
planet?
this
planet.
They've seen what
They've,
happened
they've,
before.
they've seen or know of certain geological or punctuated catastrophes that have happened on this planet.
Where the planet got warmer and we lost our
They're
water.
watching very closely the supervolcanoes.
The one, for instance, the lava dome out there in Yellowstone is one.
That pops every 600.
In Norfolk, Oregon, there's one too, off the coast of Oregon.
And in Italy.
And this is the thing is that, people get really annoyed about James McCanny's information, but I think there's some truth in that. Is that the fact is we're going through these geological changes with the Earth and the planets. Is that it's just not weather, it's plate tectonic activity, it's volcanism, it's everything because of how the Earth reacts to energy, from the sun, for lack of better words, the electrical nature. So there's going to be a lot of Earth changes that are going to happen. And
but bear in mind, these things live to be about 4,000 years old. So what's around for the corner for them may be different from us.
right.
They're really astounded about the fact that human beings have evolved so quickly over the last 100 years.
Technologically.
They're really impressed because we live such short lives.
Technologically.
That's what I-
Technologically,
You did, okay.
yeah. Over the last 100 years, they're really impressed with it.
I'm
Yes.
glad they're
I just
impressed.
want to know, maybe I missed it, maybe we covered it, but what do these beings want us, the Earth, whatever, to look like in 2018? After contact has been made and all that, what are they?
Good question.
That's up to us.
The primary
That's what I
thing
said.
is that what they want us to do is they want us to first stabilize our population growth. If they're going to seed us any technology, and this would be the interference aspect of it, if they were ever to seed us technology, food making technology, they would have to see from us, not seed, see from us some attempt to stabilize our population, not reduce it.
Stabilize it.
Well, it's happening in the Western countries, in Europe and
Right.
American population.
And once they see that, then they know that we've taken responsibility for our own backyard. Now I'm using a human term. They didn't use that term. And it's possible that technology can be seeded
Also,
over.
the other issues too, environment. We have to take care of our environment. They
See,
say-
I disagree with
If
this
they would give
very
us the
strongly.
energy
This is,
technology,
now,
we-
like I said, this is an aspect of it. No, they won't do that
They
because
won't
we're
give
not
us the energy
responsible.
tech-
No, I wouldn't give this human race the energy technology because we're not responsible. We use this as a weapon.
Well, that's true.
And we could also take the technology. We could take some sort of technology, and we could, if it's food technology, we could double our population.
Yeah, but I think we should more than double it. I think that each human being is a source of huge spiritual power, and that the 0-point energy or the non-mass or whatever, it comes from human beings.
When we have, according to
We
the,
need more creativity, more diversity.
according to the conformers, if we have this ELE event,
What's ELE?
extinction level event. Okay, let's say
When-
they could only take this is from directly from a source. They could only take roughly 500,000 people off this planet and try to save it. They don't know they don't know if they can do that first because human beings are too fragile and we have a great difficult time surviving outside of
The
our
Van Allen
ecological
belt?
sphere. No.
Talk about the extinction level event,
Let me stay with this. So we cannot survive outside of our ecological sphere because we're too fragile. Therefore, they would have to take our whole ecosystem and put it on board their very large ships. This is exactly, I'm giving you straight.
Mm-hmm.
By doing that, that means everything, all the way from mites to bacteria, Their
No
whole
result.
ecosystem. Yes.
The
literally.
candida, everything. We need it
Literally,
all.
if we are to survive.
They don't even
And
know
it's
that
daunting.
they can do that.
They don't even know if they can do it. Now, here's the other issue: is two, the human race. What impresses them, Shawn just mentioned, is the fact that we have so technologically advanced to that we're the most successful species I've ever seen on this planet, and this means the reptilian on top of it. Now, the question is the experiment over? In other words, if we were to die off, would there be another intelligence that would take over that would be superior to the human race? And they don't know the answers. So
They don't know the answers.
The question is whether or not it would behoove them to save aspects of the human race, but they cannot save 7-9 billion people.
But
Yeah.
just talk about the extinction thing.
I'm saying
What
this
is that-
is
what
from
is
their
that
point of
thing?
view.
You haven't talked about this.
Yeah, ELEs, extinction level events.
When will that happen? What is that?
They don't know.
What is an extinction level like that?
Extinction level event would be a punctuated catastrophe such as a super volcano
endorsing
exploding.
condoms?
The super volcano in Yellowstone
Oh,
discharging itself and basically
wiping out.
Wiping out all
Here's the other
sunlight.
thing, and I agree with McKenna. A
Most
very large comet, depending on its size, its speed, and its distance, we get caught in the tail of its coma. Okay.
Well, couldn't those guys
And that would
help
be
us?
a major pollution event, and that would cause a lot of problems.
That's an excellent question. I'll give you an answer.
Yeah, I
to
want
that.
those guys to help us.
Our guy doesn't know because these things are very, very tight-lipped. They
You can't
only
read them.
let our guy know as much as they want our guy to know.
Do these guys talk
So
directly
his-
to your guy, or they talk to a higher
Directly.
up?
Yeah,
They
directly.
talk directly. Control these ETs talk directly to
he
your guy.
is an envoy, a
Really?
picked envoy that's going to be used in the future when contact is made or disclosure is made between this ET race and the power structure.
So we're getting his third hand.
Well, I'm
From
still-
your guy to the control
I'm
of your
still
guy to
getting
you
what
to
the
us.
point of the landing or the floating in the air or whatever is.
Because we get to
They're
throw
not going
rocks
to-
out. Don't throw our
They're not going to
spears.
do anything for us. They're not going to do anything with us. So it's more like what, an evolutionary leap? Like we see their ship, and so we know that.
I got a good.
It's a leap of perception.
I got a good analogy for you. It's very simple. I really do. It's Arthur C. Clarke's 2001 when the monolith is, or the monolith is a monolith.
Yes.
was,
Right,
was
so that's
implanted
what it
in there, and the chimps went up and touched it, and it changed things. It changed a new paradigm. We're going to have our monolith
The
again.
difference is the monolith didn't have beings attached to it. This is a society that I would assume that after we touch their ship, we would then want to engage the society, whereas the monolith is a monolith.
For all we know, is those ships will park over for a month, and they'll just say, "See you, boys. See you in
then-
200 years."
But we don't know that, so this is my question. He
No,
doesn't
this
know
has
what
been
they're
this
doing.
has been talked about.
They have no problem going away.
And you know something? If in my ideal world, that is probably what I would like to happen, because it would
Yes.
still keep our self-determination and our free will in place, and it would say it's up to you guys to get your house in order.
So what's special about 2017 as opposed to just right now?
I don't know.
It's a date that was offered up there, and the referring to that have entertained this believe that that's a date far too soon. They don't know logistically how they could put our house in order to deal with such a catastrophic event such as that, because it's going to be, people could melt down. I mean,
It's a meltdown fact. Guys,
But
there's no
forget
guarantees
that.
here.
Well, this is the thing. It's not as though, people are hinting about spirituality, but if there is such a thing that, as something that is transcendent of logic, and that logic is not the pinnacle of what humans are and should be, as these spiritual gurus and
No, it
leaders
could
sort of
actually be a source of power.
allude to. Well, no, what I'm
Through
saying is
consciousness.
there's something more to us than this, and if that's true, then why would those beings want to engage this? This would not be a quality to them. It would be something less. So they wouldn't open up their society to us unless there was some sort of,
It's an initiation.
board
He's
type
been
thing,
talking
Well,
about
where
some
like
kind of
if-
bringing us into it that
if
way.
there's an extinction level event that's going to happen.
before 2017.
No, I'm not saying that at all. No, that's not in stone at all.
Okay.
It's going to happen within a period of time
This
that's
is their-
reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay.
If human beings can get their population under control, they can save the majority of the human beings. But they will not lift a finger to get our
Just help us
population.
avoid the
They can save
extinction.
us here, but they can't save us there.
I'm sorry?
They can save us here, but they can't save us there.
I think we have to save ourselves.
That's
I
right.
agree, Paul.
That's absolutely
Stop
correct,
the
Paula.
extinction level.
Listen, guys, I don't want to let the human race off the hook. Listen, we made our bed, guys. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm just saying it's the human race.
Look,
where we're at.
If there's a
we made
super
our bed.
cauldron explosion, that's probably not our fault.
Yeah.
No, that's not the point. The point is how many human beings can they save before that happens?
500,000, they said. That's not.
Right.
That's
So
not,
now-
you can't get it down to 500,000.
Now the aspect that they're looking at is
We
that
have to keep shopping around.
Are you rapture ready? Is the question.
what they want us to do is reduce the population to a point where they can save the majority of us. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to.
By the way, you know they did say, first of all,
Well, because here they're looking at it from a selfish point of view.
Most people
The selfishness is that they've looked at humanity. They've seen we live incredibly short lifetimes, but yet technologically we have grown to such a degree, and we are spiritual creatures that they don't want us to go away. They're fascinated by us. They think that the universe would be a poorer place if you saw a lot of the human species were wiped out.
That's really nice.
but also what they don't like about us, first of all, going back to the half a million that would be taken off, most people are probably not going to want to leave the planet. They don't just,
They go
I'm staying
down with
here.
it. Go down with the
I'm
planet.
staying right here. I mean, a lot of people would say.
I
They know that.
Believe me, I've lived in hurricane areas and nobody wants to live.
No, you mean
What was
electricity,
it? What was it the other point I would hit there?
fans,
What just hit it? Water.
Can I just say one
Showers.
thing? Shawn, since I was at Disclosure last time, there's a couple of things I want to ask you. Yesterday when we were on Howard, 101, there was one point where you said, I thought you said something about contact with an ET, but Molly remembered that you said, this knowledge changes you forever. And you went into a very deep place that I wanted to share with you, and I thought it wasn't appropriate, with
On air?
whatever millions of viewers were listening. What is it?
One-
Was it knowledge that you said changes you forever, and you really...
knowledge will change anyone.
Or what
To
this-
the extent this knowledge, since it's so marginalized, I mentioned since 1953 the CIA had put in through the Robertson panel a disinformation campaign and a debunking campaign,
Psychological
warfare, and people that believe that there are extraterrestrials that live and visit us. When they put that in place, people were marginalized. So when you go down this road and you discover what Clay and I discovered, your reference points change. And when that happens, it's difficult to move through a society that's completely entrained to think that you have tinfoil around your head and you're putting it around your head so you get better reception because you're a nut job.
But it works.
What works?
The tinfoil.
Yes, James is a jolly guy.
That's good. That's good to know. But that's what I mean. It's
But the
say
play-
you want to. You meet someone, right, and you fall in love. And they go, well, what are you doing with your life? You're chasing ETs. I want to have a family.
No, I have...
All those reference points, all
But
that entrained activity affects you because everything they want to do, you think 10 steps ahead. And you say, well, no, I don't believe this and this and this. And your statement that you believe the President of the United States is telling the truth because you believe this. Your perception of how you live completely changes, and it's a very isolating feeling.
Okay, now I can really start to connect with you. Now, I had a boyfriend a long time ago who believed in ETs. It's quick. And there was just a point where he waited 6 months before he told me about some contact he had. And he told me at a time, and I'll never forget the tears rolling into my ears, as he was describing a civilization of love, a civilization without racism. I mean, he gave me the experience. That's what I'm sensing. And I'm sensing, Shawn, you're talking about the isolating part of this experience, but something must have touched you about the truth of this knowledge. And that's what I was trying to connect with, to pass on to others, because I am impressed with you, even though I don't believe in population control and some of the other things that
I didn't
we
say
could
population control. That's a policy issue.
Or that there
and I'm
have
not
to
going to
be-
go down that road because
or that
how
there-
you reduce populations can be very nefarious.
No,
you can do it through,
but I'm saying I'm not believing that there's too many people. I'm
I believe
thinking
in-
there's more creativity involved, but I'm believing that when you say study power, I'm believing in power with as opposed to power over. If you're going to connect with some big thing hovering over, instead of throwing our spears at it, let's go the other direction and see if the source of everything in the universe, the consciousness, is accessible through ourselves, and then see what the connection will be. In other words,
I believe that we live in an open system. That means it's not a closed system.
Yeah.
And that we interact with not just ourselves, but we've closed off ourselves from other races, other beings. If you close yourself off from other beings, you're closing your system in, and which means that you're not reaching your own reality. You can't ignore the fact. One shouldn't ignore the fact that there are ET races. If you embrace that, it can only help you define yourselves. Our fear of other ET races really illustrates our fear of ourselves.
I agree.
It's a mirror image. It's like Charles Cooley once said, I think it was Charles Cooley, the looking glass theory of perception. Right. You perceive others as others perceive you. Well, if you're in a room by yourself, it's difficult to get an accurate perception. You start playing your own mind games.
So the fear we have about the ETs is just our own projection of...
We're still here is the good news.
But I still think we're a little in our head. What happened to you that makes you believe this? Because as human beings, we are also emotional beings that believe in love. We respond to love. Even what you're saying is kind of the opposite, that you're alienated from a society who believes in different things, implying that there's a missing of that love.
Well, maybe I have way too much hope about humanity. Maybe I like humanity too much. Maybe I like being human all too much. Maybe I'm over optimistic about human beings. Maybe I'm Candide himself, the ultimate optimist. Maybe I think that human beings still can get there. A lot of people have given up. I still think we can get there.
But do you think ultimately we're that different from ETs?
Yeah.
Why?
I think we are.
I think we are really. I think we're really because I think human beings are really. I think we're incredibly spiritual.
I think it's because of our biases.
Because of our what?
Our biases.
Okay.
Our prejudices.
Well, I mean, we're all individual. Racism is, I think, tossed around a little too easy. I really do.
Right, I know.
We're all biased.
Right.
People say you shouldn't judge, and I say you just made a judgment.
Right.
No, we all have biases. The thing is that there is a degree of tolerance and there's a degree of uplifting that has to happen. But it's up to that person to want to be uplifted. And I don't know what button you have to push to get them there. I want to get them there. I want to get them there on their own terms. I don't need ET to do that. But if there's some catalyzing event, Jesus on the cross, Buddha.
Can I ask you a question?
I mean,
directly off of that.
Yes.
My question is directly off of that. For me, there have always been two parallel paths. The literal seeing of, as you said, the different levels of the pyramid that are just out there and they're manifest. But then alongside that, as you said, knowledge changes you. All these things are changing us. There is that pyramid as well of consciousness that literally does. I'm sure most of us have all had these experiences that awareness has changed, consciousness has changed. But just as with the first level, there is this wall with that pyramid that we get up to where it's a little difficult to see around, and you have a source that's beyond that wall, and even beyond him there's another wall, and there are these certain places, and the same thing with consciousness, that we can get up to. Our consciousness can be expanded. But then we have these pockets of individuals who come along, and they are in that wall. Consciousness has taken these sort of quantum leaps to create these beings, and they all say that we're all capable of it.
Sure.
It's all these dormant abilities. What's your view about that? And my second question is, if you don't mind, is do you think cohesion is so necessary as possible within
can we just get James, because we only have 5 minutes, and then you can wrap it up?
Well,
what's the different energy level? ETs. Why are they different? Why are ETs different from human beings?
No, I mean, I think from my experience, it's like if you're in the room with them, their energy is so different. It's so alien. It's not like I'm not next to Jeremy. It's really a whole different.
Cognitive thing.
It's not a cognitive thing. It's an ontological thing, and it's also.
They don't love? ETs don't love like we do?
It's like saying, do Europeans love? There's different kind of Europeans. I might love my son and I might not love, my grandmother or whatever, the banker or Paulson. But I think it's, there's so much variety
in the universe in terms of life, in different kinds of life,
Can
different
I
kinds
offer
of
something?
consciousness. It's always, I think, a mistake to say, oh, ETs are like this, or even life is like this, and like this. Life is like everything.
The reason was
Yeah.
because there's principles of nonviolent communication, of all human beings having the same needs if you can just empathize. And you did a really great interview, you may not remember, in 2005, which I just posted with Shawn, and to see if you can take something of greater power
I can only give you a very specific.
and connect.
Okay. What are the similarities? What are the differences? When you deal with reptilians, you're interested in this.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with reptilians, first of all, they're very, very large, dense creatures. Their height goes anywhere from 7 to 8 feet tall. They're anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pounds. Their skin's very much like a rhino. Their snout is very similar to a T-Rex, but not as pronounced, softer features. The eyes are on the side of the head. They have nodules on the forehead that sense electromagnetic changes. They have 4 fingers. 1 finger is used as a thumb. They have 7 sections to each finger, as opposed to our 3 segments.
Which
they're
race are you talking about?
The reptilians. They're
Oh.
very dexterous and they're superior tool makers. They're non-violent, but they got very sharp teeth. I wouldn't want to see one of these things feed. They got yellow eyes during the daytime. At night, their eyes emanate a red. They have a very long, fast gait. They have a stub for a tail, slit for ears, slit for nose. Don't know whether or not they really use them in that sense. And when they meet each other,
It could be redundant.
now this gets into they have a bond. They bump each other. The harder they bump, the more familiar they are with each other.
Also, by the way, their arms.
How do you know this?
Here, let's finish with the description. I'll tell you that.
We
Take
actually-
a T-Rex.
We have 9
and
minutes.
then we modify it. Okay, that's exactly what we're dealing with.
Oh, so
okay?
they were
But their arms are not
dinosaurs?
stubby.
They were
No,
dinosaurs.
they have no shoulders.
Your
The arms
source
are
has
long.
met these
Yes,
and
yes.
communicate telepathically with
No,
them.
No,
they
no,
talk.
no.
They talk.
They
to
talk
each
in
other.
English.
Physically
That's it.
interactive.
They've had modifications done, technological.
Really?
Their gait is very strong, but they when they're threatened, they make a gurgling sound.
They show their teeth.
And they smell
And
out.
when humans,
Do they not?
can you get me, Paula? Can you get me
sorry,
here?
but I-
When you threaten or they feel threatened, there's a submission posture that you give, a submissive posture that you give to them. It's hands on your knees and head up.
Really?
Well, this could come in handy. Okay.
Can
Can you do that once more?
Now, but what's
like
interesting
hands on your
is-
knees, head up, just like in prison, just like this right here.
Just like women.
And then
I
they'll
would do that.
and then they'll leave you alone.
As if you're offering the throat.
Well, what about this man's
They have
question?
very sharp teeth, so
Oh,
I can
that
only
one,
surmise
forget
that
How many of them are there on the planet?
Alan's
That
not
we have to
very-
We saw
these are connected to a particular
our source
race.
saw-
I don't know why they're there. I don't know where they come from. My guy saw about 16 different varieties of them.
of ET, of reptilians. 16
Right.
varieties of
No,
reptilians.
they're all the same species, but 16 different individuals.
Really? Oh,
On our planet.
yeah. From
I'm not
yeah.
gonna get into that.
No. This particular species, he saw 16 reptilians that appear to be a sect, call it,
Right.
for lack of better words. They're different because he could notice differences in patches, maybe
But just
a
a
little
second,
bit
you
in
didn't
color.
see them.
And
No.
but
No.
where did he see them?
I can't get into that.
Okay.
I will say he saw it at an undisclosed. He did see some of these reptilians at an undisclosed military base 2 weeks prior
Do you want
to the UN meeting.
To these
Now, I'm going to get back to something that makes human beings very unique, as opposed to, you can't say this, you can't say it, you cannot say it. We don't know. But we do know this about human beings. They have the ability to see interdimensional things. There's enough history, there's enough testimony to suggest that human beings can interact with interdimensional events, people, ghosts. I think there's enough there where you can step back and say that we have that ability to interact with something that's transdimensional. I don't know if ETs have that ability.
Really?
And
what do you think?
I would, if I had a species that had that ability to deal with interdimensional phenomena, I wouldn't want to see it go
Also,
away.
the thing that concerns me with the extraterrestrial races that has to be studied is that I get a sense of a collective mentality
Right.
Yeah.
with ET. That worries me. One thing I find unique with the human species is its individual character. I don't know if whether it's the conformists or reptilians. The Greys, by the way, the reptilians loathe this particular group. with our guy in the military, they have a name for the Greys. They call them boys in the hood.
This is like high school cliques.
Well, no, there's metaphors for it. They use the same thing to help describe it.
They have their own agenda. They don't care about this non-interference directive. They do what they want to do.
So
the tall whites kind of respect it. They're a tall, Nordic-looking ET. They remain kind of at the same height to a certain period in their life, but at the latter part of their life, they grow.
And that's what they died for.
Right.
They died from?
But they live to be very, very old. The tall whites will live to be almost 1,000 years old.
Reptilians around 700 years. Greys will
Or the
live
weak snakes.
500.
My God, we're at the bottom of the barrel.
Yes.
The conformers live to 4,000 years.
The conformers.
Yes.
That says a lot for going along with the flow.
Well, I think
They'll
that
rock the boat.
So when I watch Larry King and they're debating whether or not Roswell happened or not, you know, I'm laughing because it's so far past that.
No, but I mean that's on one hand it is as a researcher, but as someone who's like trying to connect back into this mass and pull them up a little bit more, you have to think about, okay, where should we start?
Sure.
I don't want to. Listen,
That's a fair statement. I do that, but
yes.
But
Can we get back to this question here?
Yeah.
We ran over this.
Just to, I guess, to make it quick, the consciousness part. We're changing all the time. What are your views on that, on its possible acceleration?
I think I'd tell you where I say it's. I've said it from day one. It's a personal journey, and with the people in this room, you'll walk out of here, and with your experience, hopefully a very positive thing today, that you'll take that and you'll go to somebody else, and then they'll go to somebody else, and they'll go to somebody else. Some would call it witnessing in the religious sense, but you take that information and you spread it, and like a seed, it'll. Or a virus, a good virus, we can call it that.
You were saying that it's not even necessary to witness.
Well,
just by changing your frequency, you affect and impact.
I think just being aware and looking.
that does. I think that there's an organic process that when you
Right.
become more aware, your frequency, if there's such a thing, and I believe it's a belief on my part. I believe your frequency
Yes,
changes and your
And then you do
vibration
see.
changes and everything changes. This gets into
Then you see more.
the Eastern philosophies about the idea of being ultimate awareness, changing your frequency,
Well, the
changing your
Kundalini.
vibration, and,
Right.
and becoming more open.
Yeah, that's the higher levels, but Clay just gave me this government extraterrestrial recovery and disposal
Oh, yeah.
Majestic 12 document.
That's
is
from 1954?
This is published.
No.
This is a
This
newer
is
one?
by the government. If this
Why'd you
came out
give it close
Well, hold on, guys. Hold on.
into Congress, if
Hold
this
on.
was acknowledged as a
Let me-
government putting out
This is a-
something how to...
This is a facsimile.
This is yes.
This would change the
This
world.
is a facsimile. This is a reproduction. Okay.
Yeah.
The color is wrong. This is Dr. Bob Wood's interpretation of what the color of the document. This would be a slightly more yellow, a little bit darker yellow, but it's exactly the same size.
If this
and
came out
exactly
that the
same
government
print.
was putting this
Which
out
year is
and
it?
sent this to Congress, this would wake up the planet.
First of all, they believe that this Jamie Chandray 35 millimeter Bill Moore, which the microfilm that was sent to Jamie Chandray, in 1994 is when they first received this. The guy holding the page, that was photographed.
That's
okay?
not shown.
Okay, no, I don't have it. I forgot it.
Oh.
Anyhow, so I forgot it. I apologize.
This is what your guy though saw.
But it's the same. It doesn't
I don't
matter.
care myself.
It doesn't.
But
It's
this
the
is a
same.
manual put out by the government
Really
about
good.
how to retrieve
Right,
extraterrestrial
right.
vehicles.
But
I mean,
but ours was a photocopy, as you well know. We've mentioned it on the show,
Right.
and that was from another. It was from an edited version from the original one. So in other words, what came out in 1994 was a picture. They photographed it of the original 1954 books. Okay, ours was the same thing, but it was a later edition where they made certain editing differences. Like, for instance, they inserted the word "sick." Here, wait.
could you send this to everyone in Congress? Wouldn't that
The question you had was that we want to be able to move into a more peaceful interaction with one another and to be able to move through information without killing each other and reach more awareness. It's a step-by-step process. The first thing we have to do is accept the reality of the situation we're in. And from there, we can move into the idea of accepting each other and moving into interacting without doing it violently. If you move through violence, then now you have to deal with the repercussions of violence. This is why population programs that kill people depopulation, is the worst thing you could do. Because then you have to deal with the repercussions of genocide. And it's no longer the issue of interaction, it's the interaction of punishing people that engage in genocide, and you never get there. Kind of that thing.
Okay. James, we have just
No,
a few
you don't have to
seconds.
kill people directly. You know,
Well, let me finish up, Paul.
Okay, Shawn?
We're talking about violence.
The bio-warfare is violence, but it's people don't know about
See, Paul,
it. You know, what are the repercussions?
10 seconds.
So I really do think the most important thing is just for people just to keep their minds open and don't get jaded, don't become cynical. It's really important that you don't do that. And just know that we're living during a time that's it's traumatic but magnificent in many respects.
Invest in free farms.
That's a good way to close.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really wanted
How
to
do
get
we
to your...
follow what you're doing?
Is
the camera off?
There's a good place
Yeah,
for
we're
a
gonna-
nice forum.
It's just a little.
I encourage you guys to go there because
We've done 2
that's where I'm putting any information I have. It's under the UN meetings, and my username is temporal. So
So you go on the computer, you go to the UN
You can
first?
take these.
no. When you go on the computer, it's Open Minds Forum. You'll see a list, and